Hey, welcome to this hybrid EPA class that Jim Patton is putting on, lead service line inventory need to knows versus what you've heard. There's been a lot of stuff that's been floating around out in everyday life about the lead service line inventory, what you have to do and what you're not required to do. And today they're going to discuss they're going to dispel any of those rumors that you may have heard. If you can hear me and I can see your face on screen, give me a thumbs up. Good, good, good. Awesome. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get things started. I'm going to turn things over to Jim Patton. Jim Patton, are you in the house?
We are in the house.
Hey.
Well, good morning, everybody. We want to thank everybody out there in computer land, TV land, and we want to thank the ones that's here in the studio with us, our live studio audience. I have today with us Austen Dudenhoeffer with DNR. He's the one that made the spreadsheet. He's the one that knows quite a bit about this lead inventory. So today we're just going to sit and talk about what you really need to know and what you really need to be doing. We're not going to sit and follow a whole script. I'm not going to have a whole presentation. We're going to answer your questions. I've got 3 pages of questions that come in yesterday. We're going to answer them. We're going to answer your questions live. You think of something, you just chime in, raise your hand, ask that question, and we'll get an answer to you. So without any further ado, Austen, how are things going with DNR and this lead inventory so far?
Yeah, so far we've received 45 official submissions for service line inventory. In total, with community and non-transient, non-community water systems, there should be about 650. So yeah, it's still kind of not that many that have come in to date. And I understand like water systems are trying to do as much as they can before that initial deadline to submit that Excel spreadsheet, which is October 16th, 2024 of this
Be
year.
here before we know.
Yeah, which is coming down the pike.
Yeah.
And we did send out multiple like email blasts. There's about 4 in total. And we're planning to send out another one here pretty soon with some updates and just kind of remind them of that deadline that's approaching for that initial service line inventory submission. You can still have unknowns on that initial submission.
Right.
And some of the bigger systems, especially, it's going to take them possibly years, to work through this. It's a living database, but it really benefits the water systems to try to knock out as many as they can.
Everything you can.
Yeah.
Now, as we're there right now, I'm going to get on with this. I've had so many questions, and this was at the top of my list.
Yeah.
I've had so many calls from systems going, hey, I've only got to do 10%. That's not true.
Yeah. Yeah.
10% won't come into effect until next year and the years after.
Yeah. So so that's in the new rule, the proposed lead and copper rule improvements, where they talk about a 10% mandatory rate for identifications and replacements over a 10-year period. But that doesn't kick in until that new rule goes into compliance. There's usually 3 years between the effective date and the compliance date. So you might be looking at 13 years total to have like the inventory, quote unquote, complete.
Yeah.
But then again, it's going to come back to bite them. Like if there are a bunch of unknowns, they have to send out like a warning or notification letter to each customer who has a confirmed lead service line, galvanized requiring replacement, or remaining unknown. So it does benefit you, the water system, to try to identify as much as you can, because that's fewer letters you have to send out.
Less work you're going to have to do on the end.
Yeah, and there's a 30-day time limit.
Yes.
Starting October 16th when you submit that initial inventory.
Or whenever you submit it. If you submit it early, your time starts to come.
Yeah, and we hope that the water systems can submit earlier than that they don't all wait until the last day and overwhelm us with a ton of submissions. But that 30-day time limit is gonna kick in. So if you can submit it now and you're not held to that 30-day time until October 16th, to get those, then there's 30 days to get
To get it done.
customers, are supposed to be notified. And
So in all, what we just said, the questions that we've received, our circuit riders have received, is I've been told, and we know who's been telling it, but it's not true. You have to do as much as you can. And if you can complete it, complete it. It's done and out of the way. So if you got 1,000 connections, I'm just going to kind of throw a scenario out there, and you do 10% of those 1,000 connections right now. Say, hey, I'm done. That's all I'm going to do. You've got 900 letters that you're going to have to send out. And you'll have to do that within 30 days after October 16th of 2024. So you're just creating more work for yourself.
Yeah.
If you're just going to do 10%. Don't do 10%. 10% is not even in this equation right now.
Yeah.
So do all that you can, get everything. And we know there's going to be unknowns. We know there's going to be customer refusals. We know that.
Hey, Jim.
But let's limit that. Let's not create more work for ourselves.
Hey, Jim.
Thing I wanted to mention, also, because some systems were asking us, can they do those notifications early? And yes, EPA, we contacted Region 7 and asked them, is it okay if they submit some of those warning notification letters sooner than October 16th to get an earlier start?
Right.
And Region 7 said, yeah, they would accept
They're
that.
going to allow it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
keep an eye on our webpage. We're planning to post as soon as possible. We have that letter put together, and we're trying to get that posted as quick as we can. And we also,
Now, when is it going to come out? Do you know?
yeah, so the
Because I know systems want templates for that, so they can make the templates. And
Yeah.
I've already got some that I'm kind of putting off
Yeah.
because I'm waiting on this template. So
yeah. So in June, so we're planning to get the English version. We'd like to get that posted on our webpage June this next month. So by the end of this month, if all goes well, hopefully get that English version posted. And we do have 5 other languages that it's going to be translated into. And at the bottom of that page, we have the English version that's been reviewed now. And at the bottom, in those 5 other languages, there's a line that tells them, if you need this translated, please reach out.
Right.
And we're planning to go above and beyond, because technically the water systems would be the ones responsible for translating that according to the rule.
According to the rule.
According to the rule, but
they're going to do it.
Contract. Yeah. So that way they'll just have it already translated, done for you. And if you need to share that with customers that are non-English speaking.
Right.
So
what this is, I'll kind of lay it out real simple. What this is, they're creating the template that the 30 days that we have to send a health hazard out to customers that are customer unknown, lead, LCR,
or
galvanized,
replacement.
that we have to send them out to, like the scenario I had a while ago. If you just do 10% and you got to send 900 letters, these are the letters that you'll have to send out to customers.
Yeah.
Now, be prepared if you've got a high Spanish speaking population. You have to have those letters out in Spanish or whatever. You said you got like 6 or 9 different languages that you're gonna.
Yeah, I think there's at least 5 that were common languages. There might be some additional ones. And so even the English version of that at the bottom, it says if you need to request or what.
Something.
Yeah, extra information. Because some of them might know enough English, they can still read it.
Yeah.
So that'll be an option.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Don't create more work.
Mm-hmm.
Don't listen to some of the financial people that's saying only do 10% because we're going to hit where that 10% is coming down the road. We do have a question on the screen, and it says, can we check both sides of the meter boxes for the spreadsheet requirements? Actually, you need to check both sides of the meter.
Yeah, so for visual inspection, it kind of depends too on where the ownership boundary is, but yeah, assuming ownership, yeah, split it, the meter. And, EPA's recommended best practice is 3 points of identification for visual inspection, 1 on the system-owned portion and 2 on the customer-owned portion.
Right.
So, yeah, if you can see each end, in the meter pit, but it has to be the ends of the actual service line, not the meter setter, not a connector. Then you can say, okay, we got 2 points right there. We got 1 on each side, 1 the system side, 1 the customer side. And where the service line enters the building through like the basement or the wall, if you can see it entering there, that's a 3rd point. So that's the
If they can see it coming through
Yeah.
and we call it the
Yeah.
point of entry, like you said, could be the basement wall, could be the floor, the
yeah.
crawl space, if it comes through there, if you could see it. If the customer knows what it is, and if the customer can get a picture, pictures are great.
Yeah,
At first they said, oh, we have to get a picture. You don't have to get a picture, but pictures tell 1,000 words.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was helping one of our smaller systems review some of the documentation their customers submit, and the pictures were in some cases more accurate than the forms.
Yeah.
And sometimes they would misidentify, like there was a floating nut on a copper pipe and they called it galvanized. And so in the picture, I could immediately see,
right.
oh, this is a copper pipe. So in some cases, those pictures, that helps you, the water system, confirm what the customer's identifying is correct. And it's not the gas line coming into the stove, that it's a water
Yeah.
pipe at the indoor shut-off valve.
Which I have seen a
Yeah.
picture of a gas line already.
Yeah,
So,
if you see a shut-off valve, you also get a glimpse of the premise plumbing.
Yeah.
It starts after that, so you're seeing both the service line and the premise plumbing.
that's another question on down the road here, but all in all, yes, please check both sides of the meter pit. That's what we want.
Yeah.
The EPA says 3 points if you can.
Yeah.
Now on the spreadsheet, there's just room for 2, of course. So,
Well, so there's method 1. So method 1 is the visual inspection of the meter pit. Method 2 is the customer self ID.
Yeah.
And that would be where if the pipe comes in.
Yeah.
And you can list, if you have multiple methods or records, in column V and column W on our spreadsheet, go ahead and put the number that corresponds to that method from table 1 on the instructions tab and put a comma between each of those. So if you're using like 3-point visual, you could put 1,2, and that's the meter pit and
right.
where it enters the building.
So while we're at the meter pit, there was another, and I've got another question here.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say a lot, but we've had a few just say, we're gonna suck the meter pit out, and we're gonna do an inventory at the meter pit. If there's no connectors,
Mhm.
you can do that. If you've got the line coming from the main.
Yeah.
With no other connectors going into your setter, you could do that. And if they've got their service line, customer service line from the setter straight to the house with no connection, you can do that. So a lot of people wants to suck that meter out, but a lot of rural water systems or districts will run a connector 5 foot out, 3 foot out, or whatever. So you really don't know what that customer has on their side.
Yeah.
Connected to that.
Yeah, be careful because sometimes you might see a copper connector that's, a few feet or whatever long in the meter pit, and that could be connected to a lead service line.
Yep.
There was actually one case where they're experimenting with some acoustic technology, and they saw plastic and they connected to, and it indicated to them it was lead. And sure enough, when they potholed, they found a lead service line connected to plastic on the ends.
Yeah.
And, but that's would be a new emerging technology. I mean, that's still, like, we do have a category 14 other,
right.
But there's so that one's not necessarily been officially approved by EPA, but that was the technology that they were looking at in some different scenarios.
Well, I know we've had some contractors suck out the meter pits, then the water district say, hang on.
Yeah.
We use 5 foot connectors.
Yeah.
And then they have to go back, that contractor will have to go back
Yeah,
and then pot a hole on the service line, so.
yeah, yeah, a lot of our systems that use connectors, yeah, you might have to pothole. What EPA recommended is 3 to 5 feet on each side of the meter, but then again, depending on the length of the connector, I know some systems, just to be safe, we go 7 foot
I've
or
got,
so out.
I've got one, water district up north
Yeah,
that they were on 20 foot out on the customer side.
yeah,
So if they use PVC and they'll run a piece of PVC out of the meter pit
yeah.
to keep them from out the meter pit, so.
Yeah, and EPA, they might be updating or changing their definition for connector length in the proposed rule. That's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Where if they're gonna limit that to 2 feet or less for a connector, if you go 3 to 5 feet out and you strike lead, EPA might say that is a lead service line. They would consider, so yeah, if you have a connector that's running
Yeah.
like 20
Hey,
feet,
Jim.
it's a lot, is it really a connector at that point? But that's something we're kind of waiting to see. We just have the proposed LCRI. If that makes it into the final rule, if they're gonna limit the definition for connectors to 2 feet or less. Or maybe a bit longer, we'll see.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, if they're 3 to 5 feet out and they hit lead, EPA might just have them, label that as lead service line.
Right.
Or if you're replacing a lead service line anyway, you're gonna get those lead connectors out with it, hopefully, so.
Right.
Hey,
So-
Jim, we have 2 more questions coming in. One, I'm
Experience.
going to throw them up on the screen for you. There you go.
Okay, yep,
But yeah. Okay. So everybody's-
That's the first one.
okay. I've had a lot of surveys come in, not knowing when the house was built. Okay, well,
Well, see, here's the thing though, every house that's built, you're gonna have property tax records. And so we're encouraging them, if you can, go to your county assessor and try to find that information. Sometimes they don't always have that in a digital format, it might be paper. But there should be some kind of record when that house was constructed,
Right.
Because the government wants their tax.
it's taxes on it.
So, I mean, and I know some companies even offer like a GIS layer that'll pull those dates for you.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, but that can't be something that's helpful, because in general, we're assuming the service line installation date is gonna be on or after the building construction date. Usually after you construct a building, you want to hook up the water line, so that's when you install it. So if you don't have any evidence that they hooked up to a pre-existing service line, which could be lead, as a general rule of thumb, we're assuming that it's gonna match with that date or after. So there's 3 different time periods to be aware of. Anything before 1989, the Missouri lead ban could be lead or galvanized. It was the Wild West back then. It was still legal to
Yeah.
install 100% lead service line. So anything between after 89 up through like 2013, anything after 89, there should have been no lead service lines or galvanized requiring replacement installed, but the contractor could have still put some in illegally.
Yeah.
Um,
Could have had some left over,
Could have
especially
had some
around
left over.
90, 91. Could have had some left over that they put in.
Yeah, so you can use those dates for those buildings as a record
Right.
set from like 89 through 2013, like after 89 up through 2013. But you still need to check 10% of those
Right.
visual inspection, and if you strike lead, so there's a 95% accuracy threshold, so if
Yeah.
5% or more of that 10% sample using visual inspection, if you find a bunch of lead, you can't trust that those are
That's-
non-lead.
Ben's, you're there. I'm gonna go there here too. I
Yeah,
had a question on this.
Yeah.
The 3 years,
yeah.
89
Mhm.
and up to 89, then 89 to 2013,
13, yeah,
and then 2014 to present.
Yeah.
Now, those dates are just information dates for you.
Mhm.
You still have to do an inventory if a house is built in 2014 or more. You still have to do that inventory.
Yeah.
I've had quite a few questions say that house was built in 2015. I don't have to do the inventory. Yes, you do.
yeah, and I think, yeah, because I think one of the points of confusion is in the language that EPA used in that rule, because they were talking about the public facing inventory. So you have the inventory you're submitting on the Excel spreadsheet with the MoDNR logo, that's what comes to us.
Mhm.
And that is required. So even if your system has 100% non-lead service lines, you still need to copy those addresses from your billing software, because any service line connected to the main in the distribution system is part of the inventory. Now you can certify those as probably other non-lead. If they're built like 2014 or newer, it should be lead-free. EPA was allowing schools to certify their lead-free because we had the Reduction of Lead in Drinking Water Act that reduced it to 0.25% by weighted average for pipes, fittings, and fixtures. So even your interior premise plumbing should be lead-free, 2014 or newer. So we see no reason why that date, couldn't be acceptable for all buildings in general. Their EPA is allowing schools with young kids, the most vulnerable
Yeah,
sector of population. So I mean, they can presume, it sounds like EPA is allowing them to presume those are non-lead, but you still need to fill out the spreadsheet just to document that. You can put other non-lead, should be fine, but yeah, you do need, every community and non-transient non-community needs to submit that spreadsheet with that info. What EPA was talking about, where you provide that letter that says we're lead-free statement, that counts for your public-facing inventory report, because all those service lines are non-lead. To the general public, you don't have to point out, because you don't have any lead or galvanized requiring replacement or unknowns. So that's what they're saying. So that letter counts for the public reporting side. That does not count as the inventory.
inventory.
So
Yes,
that's where I think people get confused.
is mixed up.
Yeah,
We got another question here from Derek. I'll kind of let you hit on this one because they're using a locator
mhm.
to identify the lines. Let's hear your take on this.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yeah, so are they talking about using like ground penetrating radar?
No. I think Derek, correct me if I'm wrong. You're hooking up a line locator to a copper line and running it on their service line
Like with the tracer wire, like,
with tracer wire or to the copper itself.
yeah,
And I think typical line locator. Yeah.
okay, so like,
So what they're doing is going to the meter or going a point of entry either side.
Yeah.
Hooking it up.
Yeah.
Well, they're hooking it up on copper.
Yeah.
And if it traces all the way to the house, it's going to be copper, or it'll be one type of material. If it breaks at a certain location,
Mhm.
it could be switched to PVC.
Yeah.
Switch to lead. It could
like
switch
that,
them.
kind of like electrical resistivity. Yeah, because by line locator, I was thinking like where they see the tracer wire.
Right.
So,
But I am going
Yeah.
to go one step further with that question.
yeah,
Is it acceptable in the inventory?
so we do have a category 14 other for
Oh.
new emerging technologies. However, EPA on some of these new technologies, so we're not forbidding necessarily a specific technology, but EPA is leaving it up to states. But then states were kind of hesitant to approve certain things until we hear the final word from EPA if they're going to accept that.
Right.
Because there's publications where some of EPA's Office of Research and Development was really questioning, and in some situations doubting the accuracy
Right.
of certain methods like electrical resistivity.
And
That's
that's
one that was brought into play, ground penetrating radar,
Yeah.
Acoustic. So some of these could work pretty reliably in certain circumstances. In other cases, not. Like, what if you have multiple materials chained together and you have copper to plastic with a piece of lead, so is that frequency range, is it gonna, be messed up?
And it will. We do this quite often.
Yeah,
We try to trace service lines or trace mains or whatever.
yeah,
And we do use line locators here
yeah,
just to trace a line
yeah.
My question is, if you hook up the copper and if it switches to galvanized, do you know that?
Yeah, and so one of the things, so we are waiting from EPA what we say is use at your own risk. If you're using a new emerging technology, just understand that if EPA does not accept that, you might have to redo parts of your inventory, and that's wasted time and money. And now some of the new technologies, like some demonstrations and stuff, show promising results. Like there's that one example with acoustic where they actually located a lead service line they did not see. Like if they'd used visual inspection and just seen a plastic connector, they would have missed that buried
Right.
pipe. So, and you know, that company was saying they could do maybe 70% accuracy or 80% accuracy. So what they were saying is, you know, maybe that'd be an option for doing a bulk of it to save money. And then the ones that are multiple materials where the readings are sketchy and there's not enough confidence, then using visual for that. So we do have a category other. However, you say do at your own risk. We're not necessarily forbidding a specific technology, but just be aware if
You
EPA
might have to redo it.
rejects that, you might have to redo that.
So physically seeing potholing, knowing if you put it in, you know what it is, or if that customer, a plumber, use your plumbers. Your hometown plumbers has done a lot around them customers. Your service people, they've got a lot of information, a lot of technology that they can do, and they can tell you about who's got what in the ground.
One thing, I wanted to say real quick on that technology, water testing, we did include it on the list.
Yeah.
Because it can work in some situations if you get a positive detect for lead. However, most of our water systems, we don't think that's going to be acceptable because of the hard water. And if they have calcium carbonate scale or stabilization or orthophosphate corrosion control treatment. So water testing, I've seen marketing heavily saying that, oh, water testing will identify your service line. We have seen no detect from a confirmed lead service line that's calcified.
So right now, and the way it is right now, you cannot do water sampling to identify your service lines.
No,
Can't do it.
Just as a general rule of thumb for state of Missouri, most situations it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so just be aware that it depends on the situation of your water system. If you don't have a lot of hardness and you do get detects, it can be helpful. So some of these like recognize certain technologies or even like visual inspection we're talking about, it varies, depending on your situation, if that's going to be effective or not. Predictive modeling, we say is not an ID method, and that does not count as a record set. We've seen companies that promoted that.
Yes.
This is a record set.
And there's companies still doing it today.
Yeah, that is not
going to work.
Not going to work in the state of Missouri. We're not accepting predictive modeling as an approved ID method at this time because it's a prediction. It's a statistical likelihood.
Wow.
But
it's a WAG.
But that
a lot of you know what a WAG.
That model changes and if your data you're feeding into it is bad, your output prediction is going to be off. And generally, the more data you plug in, the more accurate the training data, the more accurate the model becomes over time. But we do have that listed separately in table 1 for a reason. Your digital or paper records are 7 and 8, and predictive modeling is listed lower than that separately. So just be aware of that. That is not the same as a record.
Just don't use it.
Yeah.
We got another question here. Is there a difference between galvanized and galvanized requiring a replacement?
Yes.
Big time. Yes.
Yeah.
So if you've identified lead in your system upstream from a galvanized line, that galvanized line is considered then a galvanized requiring a replacement. Now, you can have galvanized and not have any lead in your system, and you're fine. It's galvanized line, write it down, you're good. If you don't have any lead. But if you have, am I correct?
Yeah, so galvanized requiring replacement is the galvanized line that is or was at any time downstream of a lead service line or currently downstream of a lead status unknown. So if you have an unknown service line, if you're a secondary system and the primary system has unknowns yet, and there's uncertainty if those are lead, because by default, we're presuming unknowns are possibly lead. That's what EPA says. EPA is assuming if it's unknown, it's considered presumed to be lead until proven otherwise. It's guilty until proven innocent. So yeah, if there's even a single unknown upstream of that, it could be considered galvanized requiring replacement. And they talk about what they mean by direction of water flow.
Yeah.
And how do you really, it's kind of tricky to tell, and EPA even says if uncertainty exists in your system, you should, whether there was lead service line upstream historically or not, you should presume that there was. So a lot of our systems might have had lead upstream was replaced in the past. Well, that galvanized was still exposed to leaded water. That makes it GRR forever.
Yeah.
Even if everything upstream is identified and replaced, it still could have lead adhered to the inner walls and it could leach just like a lead service line. Now, if you some situations, we had like a church building that had one service line from the well house and it was galvanized, it never been exposed to leaded water. And that they could certify as galvanized
Yeah.
non-lead.
Non-lead, yeah.
Yeah, because they could prove there's only one service line, there's no unknowns or lead ever connected to it. So that could be galvanized non-lead
Yeah.
in that case. But if you have a mixture of lead and galvanized together, you pretty much have to assume
All of your galvanized is gonna have to be
have to
replaced
be
if you do.
replaced. And we really almost wish that EPA would have just said,
Take them out.
take all the galvanized. A lot of it's rusting anyway, and it's gonna, spring leaks and stuff. So if you look at it as a long-term infrastructure improvement, if you're doing main replacements and you want to get those lead and galvanized lines out at the same time and use that available funding through the bipartisan infrastructure law, look at it as a long-term cost-saving benefit.
Never thought about it that way, but you could do that.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
can, because if you have unknowns,
yeah,
so that galvanized is then galvanized required replacement because you don't know,
yeah,
have yet.
yeah,
And you can use that funds,
yeah,
more funds coming next year and the year after that
yeah, yeah.
to replace not just the lead, but the galvanized.
Yeah, there's $50 million that's being awarded this next fiscal year just for the state of Missouri. And that sounds like a lot, but it does go fast. There's a big demand. But you can apply for funding every year through 2026 through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And you can apply for funding for the inventory part, to hire independent contractors to help you do customer outreach.
Yeah. You can still do that.
Yeah, you can still do that.
Yeah.
And you really need to identify lead or galvanized requiring replacement to get additional funding to replace it.
Before,
too.
yeah.
So you need to know if you have a problem to get that extra replacement money as well. So the inventory is the big part, and then you can do replacement in conjunction or however you want.
You got to have your inventory done first.
Yeah.
That way, because you don't know what's in the ground until you do the inventory.
Yeah. You
So
don't
that's
even know if you
what
have
this is step one, right here. Inventory.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna go for the money for the replacement. Then, it's just gonna keep going. This is, I had somebody ask me the other day, says, once I do the inventory, I'm done with this. I don't have to mess with it anymore. No, this is an ongoing, this is gonna be a what do you want to call it? Everlasting.
Yeah. Well, basically, I think of it like a living database.
Living
So, I mean, it's true. Like if you identify, all of them and they're non-leads, like you're done. But if there's like updates or new service lines added, but anything installed now is lead free.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're good. Like any installed moving forward, but it's those historic or legacy.
The old part of town,
old stuff.
the old houses in your district.
Oh, there we go.
He's trying to put up the presentation. We do have a presentation. It's kind of notes. We will get that up on the screen if you want to there, Mike. And we'll kind of get back on track of where we're at. We've kind of jumped around here a little bit, but we had I wanted to get that 10% off right off the bat. We did that. We know now we got to do more than 10%. Everything that you can. 10% is coming down the road. So we can kind of, Mike, if you want to put that presentation back up, and we will kind of start from there and still answer your questions at any time. Just let us know. And I'm sure Andy's got a bunch more questions there. So, yeah. I've worked for a system for a very long time. I've never seen lead line upon initial survey and inspections. I have not found any.
Yeah, so that's one question I've heard several times where they're
Yeah.
like, if I haven't seen a lead service line, can I presume every service line in my system is non-lead? And the answer is no. Like EPA does want each service line to be classified based on a record or ID method. And I mean, those date ranges can possibly serve as a record where you only have to do 10%. But remember, the 10% using visual inspection only applies to validating a record set. And in that case, and it needs to have 95% accuracy. So if you find a lot of the wrong material, that record
Yeah.
may not work. You might have old tap cards. And there was one system they had records, tap cards that said lead service lines. Went out, looked at them, they were copper, not lead anymore.
Yeah.
So that system had replaced those with non-lead material and not documented.
It did.
And so that record, which they were happy to know
Yeah,
they
know
were
that, yeah.
replaced, but that record was wrong.
Yeah.
So, be careful about that. And EPA is going to require a percentage of validation even for non-lead service lines in the new rule, which is going to be like 20% for systems, I think under 1,500 population. And then they'll have like a certain number for larger systems based on population ranges. But that won't kick in until that new rule goes.
When the
into
new rule
compliance.
comes in, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Jared, I am gonna say something here. You've been at a system for a long time. A lot of our operators around this state have been with the system a long time. You've put in a lot of these services. You've physically seen it. You could sit down on a rainy day and say, I know what this one is.
Yeah.
I know what 101 main is. I put it in. Now, some of the newer operators that maybe you've just been there 10 years, maybe you've been there 5 years, but your old operator that retired and had been there 30 years, if he's still approachable and you can sit down with him, use his knowledge.
Yeah. So the water system can, fill out their own affidavit.
Yep.
We don't have a version of that on our webpage. They have to fill it out themselves and indicate what the service line material you've witnessed at those specific addresses. And if you have visual confirmation already, sure, put those
Put them
down.
down. Use them.
Use them. Use that knowledge, because if you've already visually confirmed it, there's no reason to pay money digging it up again just to look at it again and say, oh yeah, it's still what I put in.
Yeah, I put that there. I know. And that's, I answered a few questions with the system I worked with here not too long ago. What'd you put here?
Yeah.
Well, I put PEX there. I know what I put.
Yeah. On the system side, they might know exactly what they put in on the system owned portion. The customer side could be trickier if they don't have records
Exactly.
for that. But a lot of systems are mailing out customer self ID form or customer affidavit, or if the customers witnessed it when it was installed, or they take a picture and they confirm or look at it and confirm what it is. That's useful information.
And a lot of people, I got this question asked me too. Well, the renters don't know what's in it. The renters probably don't know what's in the ground, but that landlord may. So the actual owner of that house is actually the one you need to talk to, not the renter. I know a lot of people just hang door hangers or put mailers in the door, this or that. But you know your system. You know who owns what. Talk to that landlord. Talk to the person that actually owns that house and say, what do you got? So, So, anyway, it's just any more questions, just pop them up. We'll let Austen kind of start going through and just giving you some information. As our on-site audience, you guys still back there, still waking? Oh, Will. All right, there's Ruth. All right.
Let's see. Okay. There's some more information. Another thing too is as-built plans. If you have as-built plans that engineer signed off on, and that engineer drilling companies visually seen what's put in the ground, you might have materials invoices. you already have that signature that professional who put them in.
I put it in.
And if he says these 500 service lines are copper on the customer side or on the system side,
Yep,
you know, you can, you know, document that. And as far as we're concerned, they've already met or exceeded that 10% visual
right,
because they're the ones who put it in.
Right.
They signed off on it, that engineer's staking his reputation on that.
right.
And so there again, they've met or exceeded that 10% minimum for that record.
We're reading the question on the screen.
Yeah.
They can all
So-
see it.
They see it too?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, you're all reading the same question we are then.
Yeah.
So,
So the service line material, so they are talking about the actual material on the customer side. So the service line determination does not change based on connectors or joints or solder.
right,
So yeah, so EPA, in order to classify the individual service line, they do want to know what it is on both the system side and the customer side independently. So
Right.
if you could have, if you know it's on the system side, but that customer half is unknown, that service line is still classified as unknown.
right.
Because you don't have record or evidence it's non-lead.
Well, like that question right there, they had a project in 2008.
Yeah.
They went in and took out all, like, the way, I guess, lead or whatever.
Yeah.
Redone the whole thing, and they put double check valves in. You still, you would still have the engineer
Mhm.
as bills.
Yeah.
You could go by them, but you'll still need to check 10% of that at least. Go out and verify.
Yeah, so if there's uncertainty on the customer side, my question would be, did they document what the customer
What the customer
service
side
line
was.
is?
Right,
Because if you did like a meter inspection or this replacement and they say, okay, we're connecting to copper on the customer side.
Right.
Then you have visual confirmation documented, some type of record or.
Now, on your side, you'll have everything on your side. That's where we would go with the customer and go, do they have document of what they hook to? If they do, use it. But if they don't, that's where you're gonna have to go in and do an inventory on their side,
Mhm.
pot a hole, or try to get the customer
Yeah,
knowing what they have.
and here's our definition talking about the
Yeah.
difference between a record type and a record set. And so the record would need to indicate what the service line or connector material is on the system owned side, customer side, or both. And this talks about as-built plans, installation maintenance record. So if you can tie in the visual inspection with your meter replacements or your
Yeah.
water main replacements, if you got it torn up anyway, go ahead and document what you're connecting to.
Right.
Yeah, that's really highly recommended. Yeah, and then you might have multiple types of material in a record type. And okay, another question. Cannot locate all the paperwork, but I have visual in all the pits. So yeah, there again, if you can see the service line ends in the meter pit, that's great. That's
With no connectors.
Yeah, with no connectors, but if you use the meter setter, that's a connector.
That should be right there, yeah.
And yeah, you might not be able to. Some of the wide meter pits, you can see the actual service line coming in. But yeah, if all you can see is connectors, it's not gonna help you.
Yeah, if not, you just go outside the pit, 3-5 foot,
Yeah,
pop a hole, see what it is.
Yeah.
And if you got the record on your side, you know what your side is,
Mhm.
use it.
yeah,
So,
yeah, trying to save, it's a process of elimination, so. Yeah, save yourselves as much money as you can. And excavation, we say, is kind of a last resort, not a first resort. If there's no other record or way to determine it. EPA is kind of regarding visual inspection is still kind of the golden standard for accuracy as far as what's currently in the ground. But yeah, so visual inspection, you may be able to do it without digging, you might have to dig, it just depends on your situation.
all right, another question. What happens if water testing is good? Well,
Yeah, so there again, a lot of our systems have hard water. where water testing is just a snapshot in time, and you can get a no detect from a confirmed lead service line, doesn't guarantee the absence of lead infrastructure. Lead line shows up years later,
yeah.
so.
Would be a possible findings.
So, yeah, so water testing alone, there again, is not probably gonna help you that much in this situation. But there might be other records or ID methods.
Well, and water testing, I actually, we're gonna do more water testing later on down the road.
Yeah,
I mean, it's coming. I'm just gonna tell you right now, it's coming, and different ways to do it. But right now, it's just gonna tell you if you got, maybe a homeowner's got a higher level of lead or,
now if you
Yeah.
get a hit, like a detect for lead, that could indicate a lead service line's there. So
Yeah.
definitely, if you get a positive detect, if you've done water testing
Yeah.
and you get a hit for lead,
note it down.
yeah, note it
Yeah.
down. Like, I mean, that still can indicate
Right.
potential, but you still might have to use some other way to verify, because you get a hit at the tap, but is that, you don't know, like,
Yeah.
is that from the premise plumbing? Is
And
it from a
that's-
leaded brass fixture, or is it the service
Yeah.
line?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, your service line could be copper.
yeah,
And they might have lead lines in their house, so,
yeah,
and that might be where some of your water testing is coming from, so.
yeah. And the VIL money cannot be used for premise
For
plumbing.
premise,
That's
yeah.
up to the homeowner.
Yeah.
That's their responsibility. That's their private, property. If they have a old faucet, we're,
It's strange.
Yeah.
Now we can go from the meter to the house and replace that line
yeah,
with that money,
yeah.
but we can't go beyond that point of entry.
No, and what's interesting, so you can use the federal BIL funding. The water system has to apply for the money, not the customer. The water system can use that funding to help replace the customer side. Even though that's still private property, they can use that, but it's only full replacement of the service line. And there could be a loan or a grant component to that.
With that,
And our financial assistance center, they're trying to give out as much grant as they can. Grants you don't have to pay back, but loans do. However, there is a percentage of loan that could be required. There's only so much grant they can give out. And so,
and that's where we're hearing it with boots on the ground, systems going, why do I want a loan
Mhm.
to replace this? It's something that we're gonna have to pay back that we're not gonna get any money from.
yeah,
So I feel your pain. I hear you. They do have grants.
Yeah.
But I do know that there are some loans tied to some of them, so.
and it seems like our larger utilities have more resources, more revenue they get from their water bills and other stuff they can use. And some of the smaller systems, there was one that would have had to take out a $40,000 loan, and they didn't really want to do that. I think
No.
they only had 30 lines, so they preferred not to use the funding option and just do those 30 lines as they could.
As they can.
Yeah, on their own, like, because mailing those forms to customers is cheap and easy,
Right.
easier option, and visual inspection if they can.
Well, and some systems may go in partners with the homeowner.
Yeah,
Hey, we'll help you do this, we'll help you do that.
yeah,
And it's cheaper that way too. Some systems, I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
Can't afford it in.
yeah,
They just can't do it. There's no way.
yeah,
And that kind of leaves them in a rock and a hard place with
yeah,
this federal regulation.
Yeah.
And
that's
what do
right.
we do?
Yeah,
Flip a coin.
and there's some of them that will have like some volunteers, or they'll get their community to kind of help them or identify it. There again, you have time, that they can work on it if they need those years of time.
Right.
If they can identify it sooner. There was one smaller system though that had 300 service lines. What they did, they partnered with several other small systems. They bought their own hydrovac unit they could pull behind like a pickup truck,
Right.
and they got all 300 of their service lines knocked out. So they're going to be done. Their initial submission, they already have those confirmed.
Right.
And they're done. So it's kind of like too, it's like these are some challenges we're facing, but how do we respond? Do we react to it in a negative way? and gripe about it, or, you know, or what's some proactive steps we can do.
Well,
And you kind of see a,
it's not gonna do us any good to sit and gripe about it right now, because there's a deadline,
yeah, and
and they're not gonna move that deadline. The deadline's not moving.
no,
October 16th is coming.
yeah,
So, I've been in front of some operators that said, we're not doing this. I said, and I'll tell them, I don't care if you do it or not. And they'll look at me real strange, like, what do you mean? This is gonna come back on you, not anybody else.
yeah,
You know, it's gonna be a black eye for your system. So you're gonna retire in 2 years. You're just making it hard on the next guy in your system.
yeah. And that's one thing where, because this is the federal requirement, so we don't make the federal rules, I just
Nope.
work at the state level, but this is a national primary drinking water regulation.
It's a
and
regulate, yep,
EPA is gonna have primacy of enforcement, just so
Yep.
you're aware of that,
yep,
not MoDNR. And so when this new rule rolls out,
exactly.
and so you're gonna be hearing from EPA federal directly. But yeah, but we encourage them, like, please try to do what you can, you know, submit that initial spreadsheet, do what you can, and, you know, before that deadline. And, you know, if you think of it, you know, that way, something like a paperwork assignment kind of at first, but if you can make as much progress, and I think EPA over that 3 year, before the rules get more strict, you have kind of a 3 year delay.
Yeah.
Before that new rule set goes into compliance, then the baseline inventories due in 3 years after that first submission. So really, once you get this initial one, as much as you can done, submit it, then you'll have 3 years.
3 years,
time
yeah,
and to really work on it. And I think EPA is anticipating the baseline inventory will actually be more complete. Or in that 3 year time, they'll have a lot more opportunity to catch up. So even just doing what you can, you know, submitting that and
get
then,
what you can done,
yeah, so it's like,
plain and simple.
because you got time and it's like, we don't want them to panic, but we want them to take it seriously as well, because it's like you have years of time you can use. But then again, that's not really reason to procrastinate either, but
Right.
just kind of do what you can within reason.
I'm gonna hit on this again. Austen mentioned it. I hope you heard it. This is an EPA, it's a federal regulation.
Yeah.
EPA is gonna be the one enforcing, if you don't do it. For one thing, I mean, it's a drinking water regulation coming down from the feds. EPA is gonna be the one first levying the fines. So let's not even go there. Let's forget about that. Let's everybody get in and get what we can done.
Yeah.
And we won't have to worry about it.
Yeah. 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 And the smaller systems have fewer service lines. I mean, they might have less money, but they do have fewer service lines, so that might, you know, help them. That there's not quite as many, but
I was at a system the other day, small system, 200, maybe 200 connections.
Mhm.
And he said, I'm the only one here. I'm the dog catcher. I do the waste. Just a lot of systems are like that.
Yeah.
One person. You know, you've been there, and he'd been there like 25 years, 25, 28 years. I said, you've seen a lot of stuff in this town, haven't you? And he said, yeah. I said, you put in a lot of service lines in this town. Oh yeah, probably all of them. I said, let's stop right there.
Mhm.
You just said you might have put in about all of it. Now let's sit down and think about your side. You read the meter. He reads meters every month. I said, okay, let's get your meter book out. Let's start from where you start reading meters, and let's list everything down on your spreadsheet. Just how you do it from your meter book. And he just kind of looked at me and he said, okay. I said, now once that's all done. So you got all your connections listed on the spreadsheet. I said, now let's start from number one. Where's it at? Whose house is it? And have you ever done any work there? And he just kind of looked at me and he said, really? I could do that? I said, yes, you can do that. And I said, do you know what that customer has on their side? Some of them you will, some of them you won't, but you can find that out. And he said, this is not going to be too bad then. And I went, no. So
Yeah.
So just some, and I'm going to say this, and if I offend some people, I'm sorry. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Some have thought about this, and oh my gosh, it is kind of a pain. We all know it's a pain, but we all got to do it now. So let's just
Yeah.
roll our sleeves up, put our boots on, get it
And
done.
even in some of the meetings online, they even had Alaska. There's an operator in the state of Alaska with the grizzly bears. They're doing service line inventory there. Hawaii,
Yeah,
also doing it. So this involves all states.
it's
in the
every
United
state.
States.
It's not just Missouri. It's every state in Missouri, or every state in the United States.
Yeah, so it's a nationwide effort. We're all in this together, and if there's any resources or funding, it can be used to help.
Right.
You guys, are any questions we can answer? Or it looks like there's a question from the audience.
We have a question from our studio audience. Yes.
So, to back up to the letters, you said on the unknown, we would need to mail a letter out within 30 days of submission. Now, is that a one-time letter, or is that, I'm just going to say, a yearly perpetual letter until you
So it's,
either know?
Yeah, so it's kind of both. So it will be required within 30 days following October 16th for any customer that has a confirmed lead galvanized requiring replacement or a note.
Unknown.
It would be an annual notification. If it continues to be unknown or leaded service line,
Yep.
It would be an annual letter after
Right.
that. So it
So-
would be once a year.
So I'm going to kind of simple it down here. So all your unknowns are customer refusals, lead, anything like that you have on your inventory.
Mhm.
If you don't take it and get it all fixed this first year, you'll have to mail those letters out each year until they're known or fixed.
Yeah. And that way the customer's also informed, that they have a lead or potentially lead service line. So even if they choose not to replace it, the
Yeah.
customer can refuse.
Yeah.
It's their private property on the half that they own.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to dig up the rose bushes to get replaced,
It's up to them.
that's their
But
decision. But
we, the system, still have to mail that out
yeah,
each year.
but you've done your part. If they refuse, then
You've covered your butt.
Yeah.
And you mailed that out.
Yeah.
And it's up to them on their side to fix it or not.
yeah.
So, Will, that was a good question.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's one thing that might help customers be willing to participate is there's no penalty to them, even if they discover a lead service line. If they don't want it replaced or whatever, like there's no fine or penalty to the customer.
And that's in the regulation. There's no penalty to the customer.
Yeah,
I had a system the other day said, well, we're going to force them to answer their spreadsheet. And I said, how are you going to do that? I said, well, we're going to shut their water off. I said, you can't. If they've paid their bill, you can't. Not under this. You can't do it. And well, we're going to make them do it. And I said, well, but you can't do it that way. So
yeah. And some systems too, like the customer is ultimately responsible for the portion that they own. So if the system doesn't apply for or receive or have that extra money to replace the customer side, that cost would technically be up to the customer. And if they, want some time to save up money to cover their half, like the system would replace its portion at no added charge, or direct charge to the customer, at that time. But then the customer, it would fall to them. So that's something too. I know some customers are using a point of use device and saving up some money until they can pay for their half.
right.
Yeah.
Got another question?
Yeah.
All right, just to go back and clarify on these construction dates, let's say you've got county assessor records that says this place was built after 2014. We know by our own internal spec what our material was from that date moving forward. Can we safely say that the customer at that point is a other non-lead, and then as we move down the road and some type of other maintenance comes into play and we determine that there's CTS or PVC at something at that time, then we can go update that spreadsheet and reflect that, but
Yeah,
does that
that's
also
our-
work?
yeah.
Does that also work the same on the let's say the 1989 to 2013 range also?
So anything 2014 and after, like January 4th of 2014 specifically and after, should be non-lead. And if EPA is allowing schools to assume that, we think in general that buildings, constructed those dates should be non-lead service lines safely assumed. Now, remember, EPA might require a percentage of validations even for non-lead service lines under the new rule, which for small systems would be like 20% or so. But that's not coming into effect until like 3 years down the road. And so really, I would focus on the high risk areas first. So those ones before 1989 are the high risk that could be lead or galvanized requiring replacement. So it's kind of two opposite extremes. So anything before 89 is high risk. There's no guarantees. Anything after 2014 should be non-lead.
Right.
Assuming they didn't hook up to a pre-existing service line. And that range in the middle still needs 10% visually inspected to verify as a record set. So it should be non-lead, but contractors might have put in lead illegally. So that's why we still have the 10%. And we do specify visual inspection with 95% accuracy of those 10%. And that's ties in great with this next slide here. So if your record set is, say, tap cards, so you have 1,000 buildings that are copper service lines on the system side. So you need to check 100 of those 1,000 buildings and confirm that is copper. If 95% of that 10% visual sample is accurate, that record's good. If 5% or more is not accurate, you may have to reject that record set and use other records or methods. You could have overlap between like buildings that overlap multiple record sets. In that case, you can knock out your validation for both of them, at that same site. But this can depend on which side or both it is. So yeah, hopefully this diagram, if you want to screenshot it, yeah, feel free to. And so for any given record set, we would ask 10% to confirm it. With visual inspection.
So Kathy's got a question here that kind of follows in on this too. So regardless, if we get surveys returned from customers stating that their lines are PVC or whatever that may be, we still got to go dig up 10% of that.
Let's see, survey return customer state lines PVC. Let's see. So
if we get 100 customer surveys back,
yeah,
and they're telling us what we got, we still need to go out and dig up 10 of those.
Well, so this there again, if they're using visual inspection,
Yeah.
I mean, we want them to provide a picture to your water system. So if you have visual on that, you've already, confirmed that. Now, if you're using it, if you just have the paper part and you're just using that as a record, but that could be, an issue.
Now, if that homeowner
I think that burden of proof comes
signs that piece of paper and says, I put PVC.
Yeah.
I've got a PVC service line.
Yeah.
Us as systems can't say, well, we might need to verify that. We got to take it for what it is and say, yes.
If they have visually confirmed that, that counts as 1 point visual on the customer side. And that customer, is giving their testimony that they've visually confirmed it. And that's with visual. So they've already met or exceeded at 10%. Because they've either seen it go in the ground or they're looking at where it comes in to the building. And so, that should be already, validated. So that's not really record at that point. It's a visual.
They've done it.
Visual confirmation.
So that's why I hate to keep going back to the customer, especially if they've signed a piece of paper and saying, I know what it is. It's this. I don't want to go back and piss them off later and go, sure you know what you got?
Now, we do encourage the water system to save those photos that the customer provides. Because in case you're ever audited by EPA, you have that as proof. And also if you're
doing all the records.
Everything.
All the records.
And if you're doing like potholing or excavation, encourage them to take a picture, because that
Yep.
also helps you for liability.
Yep.
Because if the customer claims you damaged their line or it was leaking, you can show a picture and say, no, we didn't damage the line. Here's a
Yep.
picture.
Here it is.
Yeah, so, but keep that for your system records. You don't have to submit that to the state.
I
But
had,
if you're audited by EPA, that can help you.
I was fortunate enough, I've been out several places where contractors was doing the inventory. And I followed a contractor around for a couple hours. They had one crew going out, marking all the meters.
Yep.
They had another crew coming in with a vac truck. They're about 5 feet out from each side of the meter, potting a hole.
Yep.
The next crew, 2 people come up, physically shine the light down on there and took a picture of it if they could. Most of them they could. They took a picture of it
Yeah.
and done the inventory right there. Then the last crew come in, filled it up with sand, filled it all up, put the pot that they took the grass and divot and put it back in there and seeded it, strawed it, and went on.
Yep.
And I've got pictures of it.
Yep.
And you couldn't, if it wasn't for the straw, you couldn't tell they even done it.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and we saw a live demonstration of a system that had that pull behind unit, and yeah, the hole about that big. They went
Yep.
down, and it was like less than 5 minutes.
Yep.
It was probably like 3-4 minutes. They went
Yep.
down and documented it, and then filled it up, and they were done.
Yep. The guy had a magnet, and it was probably on a 3-foot, 4-foot stick.
Yep.
And he had a little magnet on there. And if he could see, if it was some type of metal, he'd stick it down there.
Yep.
And, if it stuck, he knew it was galvanized,
Yep.
And he could look on there and he had a scratcher on the other side and he'd scratch that. Well, that's copper, he'd say.
Yep.
And they were doing it the right way. But actually taking the picture and you having that in your file on each one of them. So
Yeah.
just be ready for that. Kathy's got another question here.
This is from her previous question.
Okay.
Okay.
And that template, there was one out there, one of the first ones that was sent out or what was presented that did not have the homeowner's
Yeah.
signature.
So
on it.
there's 2 different documents. One is the affidavit form,
Mhm.
and one of them is the customer self ID form.
Mhm.
And one of those, like the affidavit, if it's stamped by a public notary, if they want to make it a legal document, you
Yeah.
can do it that way.
You can do it that way if you want.
Yeah. Or the homeowners can fill out, their, customer self ID form. So
Yeah.
that's information, but they're filling that out and, consenting to that information is accurate.
Right.
Now some of those, like they might want a signature on there if they're doing it online, they're not doing the physical form.
Right.
Because we did have a company reached out to us, they wanted to do that through an app. And we said, you can do that, but you probably would want some sort of
Gotta have
signature to track, because what if your neighbor wanted to be ornery and they wanted to assign you a lead service line,
Yeah.
and they forge something, so if you're doing it electronically, there kind of needs to be some way to identify who's filling out that information, if they're not providing you with their name or address or contact or anything.
Right.
So that's something to be aware of. If you're doing it digitally, you might want some way that they can authorize that.
Have that signature. And that's what I've been telling systems. We did notice that going into this year ago that one template didn't have signature, and we tried to nip that in the butt real quick, say at least get signature, and if they want to notarize it, that's up to them.
Yeah.
But templates, there was a question on there that kind of come through their template. You have templates on your website. I have templates I can email, basically the same thing.
Yeah.
So yes, they're out there, and if you need one, you get a hold of Austen or get a hold of me.
Yeah, and the water system, yeah.
And I believe they're on our website under the download, aren't they, Andy? If not, they will be.
Yeah, and you can revise that, like we just
I'm gonna
have a
look.
standard template, but yeah, if you want to add extra things like an extra signature block.
Yep.
Or added information, contact or whatever for water system, feel free
These are your templates.
to add to that.
You can add whatever you need.
Yeah.
Certain information, but they're your templates
Yeah.
And if you want that information, add it on there. And
Yeah,
if they fill it out, it's staying in your office anyway,
yeah,
staying in your filing cabinet. You're not mailing it to DNR.
yeah,
Because they'll just throw it away. I'm just saying, they don't want no more paperwork than what they got there. So
yeah,
the pink columns. Jason, yes, the pink columns, I think it's R and S, and that was a question I had on here. Yes, R and S on the spreadsheet.
yeah. Now, there are a few extra columns that could be considered optional
Yeah.
as well. We didn't highlight those in pink. Like if you know that information, it's good to put like water main material. Because one system asks, like, do we need to dig up the roads to look at the mains if we don't know what they are? And it's like, no, if you know what the main material is, we encourage them, you can add that to for your water system information. It's not strictly required.
Right.
And some of this information in the pink, if you're using that location as a sample site, you will need to know
You
it
need to know
properly
it
classify
if you
the
are.
risk tier.
Yeah.
And so just be aware of that. It can change the risk tier, because
Yeah.
if you have premise plumbing that's like copper with lead solder, under the current rule, that could make it higher risk.
Right.
And so, yeah, just be aware of
So to answer Jason's questions, the R and S, the pink column, they are optional.
yeah, they are optional.
If
Fill
you
it
do
out.
have that information, fill it out.
Yeah,
You know, if the customer provides that for you, fill it out.
yeah, or whether like point of use, point of entry, filter, like how I think it's Q.
Yep.
That's optional there again, so I would not
Yeah.
expect them to figure that out for every customer, but if you're want to use that customer as a sample site, say they have a confirmed lead service line, you would need to know the premise plumbing of that building, and if they have a softener
Right.
or something
That was a question that was gonna come up next. Column
Yeah.
Q. He kind of touched on that just a little bit, but column Q
Yeah.
is, and I've had several questions on this,
Mhm.
point of entry or point of use treatment present. What that means is, and you can add this to your templates that you're going to ask the customers.
Mhm.
Do they have a filtration system? Do they have a water softener? That's what this question is. If you don't know, you put unknown on this one,
Yeah,
and it will not hurt you on
yeah,
that. But it is a question that you're going to need to know down the road.
yeah.
Because if they do have a filtration system, softener of some type, down the road, you will not be able to take your lead samples.
Yeah, yeah, so you want to try to avoid sites that have a softener or treatment because they're altering the tap water quality. And according to the lead and copper rule, they really want you to try to use like tier 1. If you can find any, because if you have treatment, that'd make it a tier F2. Their current rule, and in the reg, it says you're supposed to avoid sites with treatment because you're removing metals from the tap water, so
Yeah.
it's not representative of just the straight tap water in the distribution.
Right. So that's what our filtration systems or softeners are doing, is taking that out.
Yeah.
So we're not getting an accurate reading of what is actually coming through that service line.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just be prepared. And you might, I had a system ask me the other day, he said, would it be all right? They already sent the templates out. And I said that, but this question here, question Q, column Q, they said when they come in to pay their bill, could we ask them if they have a filtration system at home? And I said, definitely, yes, please. And note that on your spreadsheet.
Mhm.
If you ask them, they come in and pay the bills and say, yes, I have a softener. No, I don't have a softener. Note that on your spreadsheet, because it will come to play a big part of this game down the road.
Yeah, and some of these questions on the spreadsheet are to help calculate the risk tier for you.
Yeah.
So if parameters are missing, you might not get an accurate
Right.
Classification. So
Yeah.
it does, help you there, especially those ones you're planning to use as sample sites for your compliance monitoring.
So, where are we at on that? Okay. We've
I think you
kind of
might have
hit this a little. Yes, sir.
You might have a question coming from the live audience. Will, was that
Okay.
was that a gesture for a question?
Is that
No,
a question?
nope. I saw him shake his head.
Uh,
Okay.
He's shaking his head going, oh my God, what are we gonna do? That's what it is. But we've answered a lot of questions so far, but I know there's still a lot more out there. And I don't know how we're doing on time or anything, but we've still got a lot more to cover.
Closing in on first break.
Okay. I do have another question that comes in. Column V and column W.
Yep.
That is our sources on how we identify.
Yep.
So on how we do this, the columns are the same. Where the systems and the customer, okay, they're the same. So either the customer physically seen it as a number one, I guess that's what it is, or it could be a two.
Yeah, or I think, one's visual inspection meter pit too, so,
Two,
customer
Big
self ID.
self ID.
Where it comes in the building.
So on them two columns, V and W, if you, the system, has actually verified both sides and no, you pot a hole or whatever, you're going to fill in both. You can fill in both of them, but you also may have a customer's template with that, so you can use more than one.
Yeah.
That was the question. Which one do we put down? You can have multiple ones.
Yeah. If
So
click the heading on the spreadsheet, the colored headings, and there's a pop-up that shows an example, how to fill those out, and it shows you can put like commas between.
Yep.
And we actually encourage them, EPA would like to see multiple
yes.
methods if possible. And so, if you have a paper digital record
Right.
and you did visual inspection.
Well, and then and the customer side, or not customer side, but the system side might have that.
Yeah.
You may have the records, the mapping, the records, as built or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, that might be what is it, a 5 or a
And 7 and 8.
7 and 8.
Like paper or digital.
You may have 7-8 or 7-8.
Yeah.
And then comma 1.
Yeah.
That you physically was out there and seen it. So.
Yeah.
Here's
another question we've gotten before is they said, say we have a record that states a material type, but we haven't had time to complete the 10% randomized visual inspection to validate that record. Can we still put that record down and indicate what the material is? And we told them, yes, go ahead and do that. Go ahead, if you have a record and you say these 500 are copper on the system side, go ahead and fill those 500 out as copper. And then you might need time to look at 50 of them to confirm that. And, if that changes, if you find some lead or something, you can always update your spreadsheet in the next submission. If you encounter some that are not accurate or you need to do other review.
You could do it later on.
But we told them, go ahead and if you have a record indicating what the material is, go ahead and put it down, and then you can have more time. And EPA allows that even for the validation of non-leads. They're saying they give you a certain number of years under the new rule. I think it's like 7 years after the compliance.
You got time to update it or change it or whatever.
Yeah, so go ahead, if you have a record that indicates the material, go ahead and put it down, and then you can always complete the verification.
So this come up too, like a subdivision. You got a new subdivision, say it was put in 2016. Whatever.
Yeah.
Anytime after 2014.
Yeah.
You got a new subdivision that's got 50 houses in here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this contractor, you have the as-built, you have everything. The contractor put copper in every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Austen's talking about. You could take that whole section.
Yep.
And especially if you're using diamond maps, you can highlight that whole section and fill in one thing, and it'll fill out all of it. You can use that whole section and say, yes, it's copper. Yes, it's PVC. Yes, it's whatever.
Yeah.
And use that for the whole thing.
Yeah. And if you know the specific material, we encourage you to put the specific material. There is other non-lead. There was a situation where one water system had like 3 kinds of non-lead materials in the service line. So it was like copper, it was PVC, and it was
Added.
PEX, and they're like, which one should we put? Because depending where you pothole, you might hit.
And let
different
me ask you, what's
material.
your answer to that? Because it is common.
Yeah,
There's a lot of systems out there that'll have PEX,
yeah,
then it'll go into copper.
Yeah.
And then coming up through the house, it's PVC or something.
yeah.
So
Yeah, so if you have different materials on the different portion, you can't, because they preferred to put other non-lead in that situation.
Okay.
Because even though they knew it was three kinds of materials, in the comments, you can say
that's what I was, yeah,
this
that's
is
where I was
copper,
going.
PEX, and PVC. Because yeah, depending on where you pothole, you might get a different specific material.
So on the spreadsheet,
Yeah,
on the drop down box, we're gonna put other non-lead.
yeah,
And then go over to the end, to the notes, and say, hey, this has got PEX, copper, and PVC.
yeah.
Just make your own notes of that. That way you'll know it.
Mhm.
But we're answering the question, what EPA, what DNR wants, what type of service, or what type of material it is.
And every service line in your system is going to be classified as one of four things. It's going to be lead, galvanized requiring replacement, non-lead,
Yeah.
or unknown, possibly lead. So there again, that if it's a non-lead material, we're not as concerned with it. So, but if you know exactly what it is, like EPA is going to say, well, you're classifying it as non-lead, but how do you know it's non-lead if you don't know what the material
You don't know what it
is or have some record base that you're saying, after this date, it's non-lead, even if we don't know if it's PEX or PVC or HDPE. So it's like, if you have something indicating exactly what it is, why not put exactly what it is?
What it is.
And it's good for your records too, as a
Yeah.
water system, then you know where your copper.
Well,
plastic is.
as all the systems, every system around here, we do have that. We do, we'd like not to have multiple different kinds of service lines, but we do have.
Yeah,
So, and that was the question, what do I put? There's only room for one thing. What do I put?
yeah,
So
Yeah.
that's actually what you put, just other non-lead,
yeah.
then make a note.
Yeah. Yeah, and if any part of that service line is confirmed lead, that would make it a lead service line
It's done,
anyway, so,
yeah.
yeah, so if you have
Yeah.
PVC, but it's connected to the splice section of lead, that's the actual service line, that by default makes it a lead service line, so,
If there's any part of lead in it at all,
yeah.
forget it, it's done. So,
Yeah, but the connectors are defined separate from the service
It
line
is.
now, and so that's something to be aware.
explain that a little bit.
Yeah,
We've got different definitions of connectors.
yeah,
Okay. Some operators say, well, this is a connector to me. What's a connector to you?
yeah, so in the past, we had, in the past definition, grouped connectors and service lines together, and I think that's what a lot of operators are going by, that old definition of it. But in the new regs, EPA is classifying the connectors separate from the service lines. And their definition of a connector was a short section of piping that joins rigid pipes together. So it's a short, flexible section. So for leads, it might be like a gooseneck or a pigtail. So a pigtail would be like a full 360
Circle.
degree loop.
They just looped it around.
Yeah, like a curlicue, like a cartoon pig's tail. Gooseneck is like a letter S
Right.
or letter C kind of shape. It's a curved one. And that might join like the main to the service
Right.
line, perhaps on each side
Well,
of the meter pit.
And that's where a lot of the operators, my questions are, they come to me and ask this. We don't use a connector. We use a corp stop. Oh, okay. Well, they're considered, that is a connector cord kind of to them. Okay. So they got a saddle tap, corp stop, PEX line or copper line going from there to the meter.
Yeah, or a saddle, what's it called? Like a saddle
Saddle tap. Yeah.
joint or something. See, like that, to me, would not be a connector.
No.
Because that's like a joint or something. where
And that's,
it's pinching the pipes together. So a connector is like a piece of actual.
it's going to
pipe.
connect two pieces.
Yeah, the pipe, and it's flexible. You can,
That's where I was going. Some of them saying, this is our connector. This is what we use. And I'm going, well,
yeah,
that's a saddle tap.
Yeah.
And you've got a corp stop into that. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's not.
Other non-lead and go on.
Yeah, and so the connector could look just like the service line. And it could be same diameter
Yeah.
pipe, it's just a shorter segment.
Something.
And what we're looking at for the new rule is how long is it gonna be? Or how short to be classified as a connector. So EPA was talking about putting a 2 foot or shorter limit on connectors, and anything longer, they might consider. Service
You're
line.
gonna find in a majority of the systems in Missouri,
Yeah,
you're gonna find that there's no connectors.
yeah,
I'm just gonna tell you that right now. You're gonna find that if there was, it's been replaced.
yeah,
If there's still any, and there's still some out there, I will say, but there's getting to be more and more less.
yeah. And if you stumble across a lead connector,
Yeah.
while you're doing your inventory, holding, 3 to 5 feet out, and you find the service line and a lead connector, go ahead and document that. We encourage you, we do have a column for connectors. They're not strictly required in the initial submission, but the baseline inventory, EPA is gonna have requirements for reporting connectors. So if you're already doing inspections and you find them.
Yeah.
Or have records on it, go ahead and put that. It looks like they're not gonna require you to do extra digging, just hunting for an isolated connector.
Okay.
And the LCRR even, and the proposed LCRI, mainly LCRR talked about like the highways and stuff would probably look like Swiss cheese. If you had to hunt for every connector to remain under the.
If they require them to do that,
Yeah,
that would.
yeah,
And the systems can't afford what they're doing now, how are they gonna afford asphalt or concrete?
no, yeah, so EPA
Yeah.
sounds like they're not gonna require.
Sidewalks the same way.
Yeah, they're not gonna require them to tear up every road hunting for random connectors, and EPA even says in the rule. They want you to look for service lines first, and if you strike a lead service line, when you replace that, you're gonna get the connectors out. And when lead connectors are encountered during planned or unplanned infrastructure work, there's gonna be a requirement to get those replaced.
Right.
If you have the jurisdiction to replace those unless it's on the customer side and the customer refuses. So it's kind of like they're gonna deal with connectors, isolated connectors as they're found in the future rule, but for now, you can document those discoveries and any lead connectors you have on record. Yeah, that'll help you for the baseline.
Right. Well, I think right now would be a good time to take a break.
Yep,
We'll take about 15 minutes. I drank a cup of coffee, so you know what I gotta do. So, we're gonna take 15 minutes. So we'll give everybody a little break, stretch. And, we'll start off here with Austen about where we're at now and, still answer any of your questions that you may have. So we'll see you in about 15 minutes.
Okay, we are getting ready to come back. And while we're coming back, don't forget, if you have not done so yet, please put your name and your Missouri DNR operator certification number in the chat box. That way it's just one more level of attendance that we can take to give to DNR OpCert to let them know that you attended with us today. Also, if you have any questions, please put those in the chat box as well. We will do our absolute best to get every one of those questions answered, or at least it'll be a good point of discussion. Also, in the chat box, I have put the link for the MRWA lead and copper resource page. If you have any questions or looking for templates, anything of that nature, just feel free to check that link. There's a lot of information on there. Jim Patton is coming back to the room now, and we're going to turn things back over to Jim. You're not live just yet, Jim.
Well, here we are. Welcome back, everyone. And we're going to kind of start where we left off. I do have a couple more questions on here, but we're going to kind of look at your, I'm not going to say presentation, but we're going to look at some slides here, and we're going to talk about some slides. Again, if you've got any questions at all, I had a good conversation with our live studio audience just a little bit ago during the break. Some things that's come up. we'll mention that as we go. But, Austin,
Mhm.
might as well start off where we're at here.
Okay, yeah, and here's a picture provided by one of the smaller water systems, and it shows, like on the right, you can see the PEX plastic service line coming up from the floor, then there's the shut-off valve. That's where the indoor premise plumbing starts, and then you can see it connects to copper. And so that's pretty good. You can see the service line coming in, and then you can see,
Well, and if you can get pictures of these
yeah,
from any of your customers, that'd be great.
yeah, that'd be good, and yeah, we'd encourage them to keep that for their records, just in case. Then you have, proof of what was documented visually that the customer saw,
And again,
yeah.
do not mail these pictures to DNR.
No,
It's just gonna be thrown away. You need to keep them in a file cabinet in your office. Probably a new filing cabinet for all of this stuff that's gonna be in.
yeah, or if you have digital records, if they want to save it
Right.
on a hard drive or something.
Yes, I forget, yeah.
Yeah, they can, another option, and yeah, there's some galvanized service line, and think that connects to copper on that left picture. And then think it's galvanized to galvanized.
Yep.
Yeah, on that other, you can see the exposed threads there.
Yeah.
It's magnetic.
Yep.
Yep,
And those that don't know, I mean, they can stick a magnet to this and it'll stick to this.
yeah, yeah, so galvanized zinc coated steel or iron, and so that's gonna be magnetic. Yep, there for sure. And let's see, I think I had, oops. I'm trying to go back, the screen's kind of, there's a pop up there.
See the question, Jim?
Yeah, I'm reading it right now. We do have a question from David. If I need a little clarification, if the contractor installs a service line, are we required to dig it up and physically see it? Did that contractor, does he know what he's got, what he put in the ground? Would he sign that piece of paper and say, hey, I put this in the ground? If you seen him put it in the ground, you know what it is. You can sign off on it too and say, I physically seen it.
Yeah,
Did I answer the question? I guess.
yeah, and some of those, if you have like an as-built plan or something is good. Now, some of those, if it's not a current member of your water system staff, or some of those, they said they might still want to do some verification, if they don't have that testimony from the person who, put it in, or that affidavit
Right.
who saw it, but you have indication of it where it's like a record, but not visual confirmed. You still might do a 10% on that if it's a record set.
But on this one here, like say
Yeah,
a contractor installs a service line.
yeah, he saw it go in, so
Yeah, he knows what it is. You've seen it, either or both.
yeah,
Write it down as a number 1 or 2 and be done. Yeah,
Yep.
number 1.
yep. Yeah, if you've already seen it, there's no reason to dig it up again,
Right.
just to look at the same
Look at the same thing. Yeah.
thing. It's a waste of money.
Yeah. So David, I hope that answered your question. I know I need to come up and talk with you for
Mhm.
sometime. So email me and get with me would be a good date for me to come up and talk with you. So I guess no more questions. We'll continue.
Yeah, and here's a situation. This is a diagram from EPA's small system guidance. So you might have master meter
We
where
do.
it's one system site, and then it splits to 3 different locations on the customer side. So in this case, each horizontal row of our spreadsheet represents a single service line. So that one material on the system side there, SL1, for the system owned part.
Right up there.
Yeah, so that's the same pipe, so that's not gonna change.
Now I am going to stand up here.
Yeah. And then, but you have 3 separate service lines
Right.
on the customer owned half. So you would need to probably list this on 3 separate lines.
So this could be either building, like well, it says building 3,
Yeah,
2, 1, or it could be apartment A,
yeah,
B, and C.
yeah.
So
And some systems in their comments note that there's only one part on the system side, because when you put that 3 times, it looks like you could have 3 different.
Yeah.
three different parts there, so.
And this is common in a lot of systems. They'll have a master meter going into a lot apartments or a business, school.
Yeah,
Schools are like this too.
yeah,
And I've dealt with, I do deal with a lot of schools, so,
yeah.
so.
So yeah, if you have branching service lines, each of those might be a separate part if it branches off. And here's an example too of a common situation where what if you have multiple buildings that are chained together in sequence? So each of those segments where it goes into the building, it changes to premise plumbing. And then EPA says where it exits the building, it becomes a service line again. If that's going to like an occupied residence or daily use.
Well, and like this last one right here, the school,
Yep,
this is common.
yep,
It'll go to the school, and then now there are some that has a service line off of a main that goes to a concession or this or that. That's separate from the school.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and if that's a concession stand, you still have people.
ball
If
field,
they're
football
drinking,
field, yeah,
you know, using that for potable water and.
Yep.
Well, and EPA even says service lines connected to the main, the distribution should be included regardless of the actual or intended use.
yes,
So if you have service lines that are going to a cow pasture.
Yep.
And okay, it's not presently providing water to people, but what if they put a house in there and they connect to that
Yep.
service line? Now it is providing potable drinking
Yep.
water. So EPA, that's why they want those included if they're connected.
now this
the main.
this includes fire suppression lines too.
Yeah, they include, Yep.
And I caught that right off the bat. I said, well, wait a minute, this is fire suppression line.
yep,
But it could be used later on down the road for something else, or they could tap onto that line
yep.
and have a service line for it.
Or some
So-
emergency situations where they open up fire hydrant
Yep.
and might use it potentially for potable.
Yep.
Application. So yeah, that's just the requirement, the way the regs are written. If it's now, if you disconnect, the good thing is if you disconnect from the main, then you can count that as a replacement. If it's like a lead service line to an abandoned building,
Right.
disconnect it from the main, it's no longer part of your inventory.
Well, we kind of hit on that. So let's go there because I know I've had a lot of questions on this. We have a service line coming from the main to a vacant meter or a vacant meter pit.
Yep.
Okay. There's no meter in it.
Yep.
But there's still a service line that comes out and goes to a vacant lot.
Yep.
That still has to be inventory.
Yeah.
Because it's actually still connected.
Yep.
So, and they said, well, there's never going to be anything built there. There's not. I said, disconnect that service line.
Yeah.
Take it out.
Yep.
You won't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's a common situation. And then they ask, what do we put for the other half? So say you
Yeah.
have a service line going to like a meter that's been shut off or something
Right.
or deactivated, but they never
Nothing,
installed
yeah.
the customer half. So they're like, well, the customer half would be non-lead.
right.
If it doesn't exist, anything new installed would be non-lead.
Yeah.
So we told them in our current spreadsheet, you can just put other non-lead for that customer.
Customer side.
And we are revamping our spreadsheet. There's gonna be a few things to tweak.
Oh, this is news.
It's for the baseline inventory.
Okay.
There's EPA for their connectors, they're adding a few categories there. Where they're gonna say, was it never lead, replaced lead?
Right.
Or is there no connector
Right.
at all? And so we are gonna have to tweak. Now, it's gonna be, like, if you have this filled out, it's good, because a lot of that information is gonna be transferable
Mhm.
and pretty much the same. There's just gonna be a few tweaks for that baseline inventory. But we are still waiting, to publish that till we see the final rule,
Right.
before that's.
This thing's will be
released.
tweaked down the road. On that topic, that there's no service line to the customer. And I've had that question too. And I've told them to go put non-lead, non-lead,
Yeah.
but then go to the end to the notes.
Yeah.
And put no customer service.
Yeah,
Just a mental note that you can put down there, no customer service.
question from the student.
Yes, studio audience. Yes.
So is there a meter size or a service line size that once it exceeds a certain size that it does not need an assessment? Like, it seemed like I had recalled meter services larger than 2-inch did not require an assessment?
Oh, yeah, so as far as indicating whether it's a lead service line, yeah, so typically, the lead service lines we've seen in the state of Missouri are gonna be 2-inch or smaller diameter. So, yeah, in general, if it's above 2 inches in diameter, that can be used as to indicate that it's a non-lead service line, which is good. And a lot of school buildings, we've seen this where they have to have larger service lines installed that are non-lead, so that's good. That rules out as much potential for it. So yeah, that can be a helpful indicator.
But on that spreadsheet, if you look at that drop down box, that service line goes what plumb up to, gosh, it was,
So the service line is typically from the main to the building inlet.
yeah. But I meant on the drop down box on the service line,
Oh yeah, as far as the size.
it goes way up there.
Yeah, so something there again, that's kind of optional information, but if you have info on the diameter of the pipe, that can be used to help prove that it's a non-lead. But yeah, that scroll bar in Excel, it only displays 8 options visible at a time, so you have to drag that scroll bar
Yeah.
up or down, or if you clicked on one, you can use the arrow up or down and it'll go up and down the options there.
So typically 2 inches, but that's where they kind of, I think, kind of backtrack because they said, any like the fire suppression line could be used later on. Typically, them are 6-inch lines.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, so it's not really dependent, like as far as the inventory, you still need to inventory every service line connected to the
Yeah.
main in the distribution. And that's not really dependent on size, but just the diameter might be an indicator of whether it's lead or non-lead, but yeah, you still need to include it. In some situations, you might have a single line going from the well to the building that counts as both a main and a service line.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah.
so that's kind of a funny or interesting one. But typically you're gonna have like mains following the streets or under the streets or sidewalks, and then service lines are kind of the straw that connects from the main to the building. And yeah, you could have split ownership at the meter curb stop or property boundary.
I'm just sitting here thinking about what different sizes and this and that. And actually during break, I had a text and was talking about connections again, connectors.
Yeah.
I'm going to step out just a minute and I'm going to go out to my truck and I'm going to bring in a lead connector that, and I'll show you firsthand what we're looking at from this side. Because it's a 2-inch down to a 1-inch. So I'll step out here. I'll let Austen kind of go where we're at. I'll bring that in here, and we can look at it as we go. So I'm gonna let Austen do that, and I'll go get it real quick, and I'll be right back.
Yeah. And here's a helpful diagram that shows like if the service line coming off of the main, and you might be able to see each side in the meter pit and get 2 points for visual inspection and the third point where it enters the building. Now, if it uses connectors and you can't see it, that's where pothole or hydro excavation could be necessary for visual. And there's an example there of like a pigtail connector that loops around on the bottom diagram there, if connectors are present. On that system on side for the single point of verification, it could be closer to the meter side, or if they are able to look at it where it connects to the main, they could also look if a lead connector was installed. So that can be kind of helpful to go a few feet out and possibly they can see the service line and or lead connector. If those go under a highway, that can be more challenging or might be not as feasible of an option. Due to that existing infrastructure. But yeah, hopefully this diagram is helpful. And yeah, so here's kind of showing too, like for identifying lead service line, it's usually kind of silver gray looking, and often you'll see what's called a white lead joint. And because lead is soft, they don't typically thread it, but you'll see kind of a weld or soldered joint.
Yes.
And yeah, we have a real world example here. Yeah.
That's what you're looking for. This here big knot egg or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And there's your threaded in.
Mhm. Yeah, so if it looks like a snake that swallowed a mouse or something,
And it is, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
yeah,
But it's very easy to bend. That's why they used it back then,
yeah,
because they may not have made their tap exactly where they they needed to. And back then, this was easy to get hold of. So,
yeah. Okay, another question?
question. Ruth, Will, Aaron?
Um, so on the you were saying anything over 2 inch, you know it's non-lead. So if it's a 2 inch service or 2 inch line going to a 2 inch meter going into another 2 inch line, but it branches off from there to like, just for instance, like a trailer court, do you have to identify every trailer in that court if you know it's, you understand my question?
So the question is, we got a 2-inch main going to our meter.
No,
And a 2-inch.
it's an 8 inch main with a 2 inch service line going to the meter, a
Okay.
2 inch meter, and then a 2 inch line coming out of the meter. But then after
Yeah.
that point, we don't know.
Yeah,
It splits off and goes to
Yeah.
different trailers.
well, 2 inches could still be lead, so 2 inches or less is typically what we've seen for lead service lines. You can't even have bigger.
That's 2-inch lead line right there.
And what they're measuring when they say 2 inches, it's the inside diameter is the 2 inch, because lead pipe's very thick walled. So if it's 2 inches, you might not be able to rule it out. It'd have to be larger than 2 inch, typically.
Well, we know that, I mean, we know the material of
Yeah.
the service lines to a point, and we know it's non-lead. My question is, every trailer that would be in that trailer court, do you have to
Well,
identify?
we had a trailer park that had like 2,000 service lines, and they knew it was PVC because it was a newer, I think they had the as-built plans, it was a newer system, so yeah, they still documented that, so yeah, any service lines, if that's serves as a community or non-transient non-community.
So I'm following her. Once it leaves the meter, it's a 2-inch line, then it splits off to 50 different trailers or however many different trailers.
Mhm.
I guess your question is, once it splits off, do we have to inventory each one of those lines going to them trailers? Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so each branch of a service line, yeah, could be defined as its own service line if it splits, multiple directions, and could
So
be.
you would have one meter with like, let's just say 50 different assessments.
Yeah, and we had like a mobile home park or trailer, I think it was a trailer park, and they had like, they put 2,000 down because they had, the little services were splitting off.
Each one of the trailers would have their own address there. So what you're saying then is we would have 50 different, if it was 101A, 101B, 101 whatever, you'd have 50, if there was 50 houses in there, you're gonna have 50 different,
Yeah. Good.
okay,
Yeah.
to each trailer.
Yeah, if it, splits off or forks, or we've even seen some situations of that where it's a single home and it has, it forks off and splits like a letter Y 2 directions, and each of those branches, it could be a different material and classified as its own service line.
Okay, here's one that I think we kind of hit on just a minute ago. In case of abandoned lots, I've identified the pits and have eliminated the customer's service side
Mhm.
from the set. Okay, so we took the customer side out.
Mhm.
Okay. So yeah, you can just put a note on the spreadsheet. Yeah. And you've done that right. So you can put a note on the spreadsheet saying the customer has no service.
Mhm.
Then fill it in other non-lead or whatever you want to
Yeah.
put on there, and as being no service, but
Yeah.
no line at all. Yes.
Yep.
Did that answer the question? I think so.
Yeah.
But real quick, this was a 2-inch line
Mhm.
with a 1-inch connector to it. And that's this line come out, we cut it off, but this line come out of the 2-inch main, ran over here, bent around, and connected into another line. That's what he was talking about a while ago as a connector. And I mean, they done a good job soldering it. I mean, did solder, they leaded the whole thing. So
Yeah.
melt that down and get a lot of lead sinkers out of it. But anyway, this is what we're kind of talking about as a connector. So this is a true connector. So, okay. Okay. Question here too, non-transient, non-community. And what this could be. A lot of people says RV parks, a lot of people at it, and it states 25 or more people at least 60 days per year.
Yeah.
And it could be an RV park that has seasonal, and that's where I wasn't really arguing, but telling one of the RV park owners, I said, you have seasonal people here.
Mhm.
They're here almost year round, and some of them are.
Mhm.
I said, you do have to do this. You're a public water system. You do have to do this. And he was under the impression that,
Yeah.
no, he don't.
And they can look up in Drinking Water Watch.
Yeah.
The federal type for their system, how your system's classified.
Yeah.
And yeah, because you can have, if it's 25 or more people or 15 or more service connections. And it can be privately owned and still classified and regulated as a
Yeah.
public water system.
And I did. I went to Drinking Water Watch, went out before I got there.
Yeah.
I pulled them up because I knew that was going to be a question. I knew that's what I was going there for.
Yeah.
And I pulled it up and I said, I'm the bearer of bad news, but you have to.
Yeah.
You'll have to do this. And there we go, making a mountain over mobile. He knew what it was. It was all PVC.
Oh, yeah.
He knew what he put in the ground. He put it in the ground. He knew what it was.
Mhm.
And I'm going, okay, you've got, I don't know, 60 some connections here. We can get this done in a day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's anyway.
Yeah.
Just kind of hit on that, the non-transient, non-community, what that is.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
and the various ones now, gas stations, convenience stores like that, they don't have people there. That means so they could have their own well, they could be supplying public water, but they do not have to do this.
Yeah. Yep. And might depend on like number of employees and stuff if they change classification. Yeah. But yeah, in general, like these are transient because people move in and out. It's not like they're living there or that certain number working there every day.
Right.
So if it was like a really big store and maybe they had 25 or more employees
Oh,
and they're working there every day, that
Yeah.
might bump
That's
it
gonna
up
be different,
to a
yeah.
non-transient, non-community, or maybe they have their own well or
But-
water supply.
But like I said, the mom and pops that usually you have in your water districts or you may have in your system or not
Yeah.
on your system, they have their own well and this and that.
Yeah.
They won't
Yeah.
fall on this.
No, and Drinking Water Watch, they'll be labeled NC for non-community, and
Yeah.
that's how you know it's a transient system, and yeah, they're not obligated. I think we only had one park in the whole state of Missouri, that actually fell into a non-transient, non-community. It was like Roaring River State Park.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was actually big enough or had a large enough resident staff that
State,
that
okay.
that changed, but yeah, but that was like one, state park, I think, in the whole state. All the others were in the transient
Right.
category, so. Yep.
Well, and a lot of this, on this here, I mean, your community water system, a lot of the majority of our systems that's doing this. This is who you are. This is what you're going to be doing. There's a handful of the non-transients. So anyway, that's where we're at there. So if we, is there any, how do I want to say this? Well, it would be the mobile home parks too that have their own water system.
Mhm.
The HOAs that have their own water system.
Yeah.
And maybe a subdivision that has their own. There are some that have their own. They're
Yeah,
going to follow it into this too.
yeah, resident populations.
If they meet the.
And also, if you're testing for lead and copper, already, like, you're regulated under the federal lead and
Yeah.
copper rule. So if you're collecting tap samples for lead and copper.
Yeah.
On like, could be a 3 years or a 3-year, 1 year, 6-month standard or 9-year schedule. Like if you're doing lead and copper testing,
Right.
then you know that you are regulated, under the federal lead and copper rule.
You have to do it.
Yeah, and you have to
Kansas,
do
yeah,
it, so,
yeah.
yeah, if you have a distribution system, well, even wholesalers that are community water systems that don't have a distribution, I think we have 8 total, they still need to submit an inventory spreadsheet.
So that'd be like Clarence County.
Yeah, but we were telling them, like, since they don't have the distribution, it can be basically blank in that case. Or they put that it's non-lead. But so they are a community system, but so we were having them, we're gonna tell them, since they're labeled as a community, they should submit a spreadsheet, but they don't actually have a distribution. They sell water. But we weren't gonna have them submit a spreadsheet just to comply with EPA's requirements.
Right.
And then put like other non-lead, I think, at the top line. So.
Well, let's kind of go there. We're talking about wholesalers.
Mhm.
Now, you kind of touched on it a while ago, and I didn't hit on it until actually later on we talked about it. Secondary systems.
Yep.
So if you're a system that sells water, let's say you're a big city,
Mhm.
you sell water to a water district.
Yep.
And you, the city, have lead that affects that water district.
Yeah.
You're downstream, and there we go with any galvanized.
Mhm.
That's going to be galvanized requiring replacement. So if you're buying water from any system, and I know there's quite a few out there, you'll need, is that system that sales required or obligated to notify that system they sell to that they have lead in their line?
Yeah, so we wanted them to try to get a statement from that upstream or primary system that they don't have any lead service lines or unknowns
Okay.
in their distribution. If they can get a statement from them, and that's something that seems like a bit of a hole in the regs where
Yeah.
EPA doesn't elaborate a whole lot on this, but we did talk with Region 7 or sent them an email and we asked them about that galvanized situation. Because I think some get confused that they think the galvanized only counts if it's attached to the same service line,
That's
like
where,
the first part lead and the
Yeah.
customer side galvanized. But EPA says, no, it could be entirely separate service lines upstream.
that's how I was looking at it at first. And then when Region 7 got to talk about it, I'm going, wait a minute, this is not what I'm thinking.
And we asked Region 7, like, what if there's like the first service line, the distribution is a confirmed lead service line? Does that mean every service line downstream, even if it's 6 miles away, would be GRR, galvanized required replacement?
Right.
And EPA said yes.
Yes.
That's how they are defining it.
So this may be news to some of you, but I've tried to get the word out. We've tried to get the word out
Mhm.
that if you do buy water, you need to know what that system that you're buying from, if they have lead in their, if they've got any lead, because that will affect your system. You may not have any lead in your area at all. But you may have a galvanized line, and if that system that's providing you water
Mhm.
has lead, it will affect you. So
Yeah,
will affect your customers too. So
yeah.
I wanted to hit on that because that, a lot of people, well, how do I know if they got lead? Well, I don't know if they're required to. That's the little hole in the wall that in the regulations that they probably left out there. But we need to know, or you need to know,
Yeah, sure, if uncertainty exists, they have to presume that there was.
there was.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's probably news to some of you, because now you're sitting there in your seat going, "Oh my God, yeah, this is part of it." So that was the other question I had on the secondary service. So
Yeah, and a lot of those old galvanized that are corroded and, getting close to crumbling or, leaking anyway, because that's some water systems I talked to were saying is the long-term improvement. So they're like, a lot of these galvanized lines are nearing the end of their lifespan of service anyway.
yeah.
And they're gonna start springing leaks. They're gonna have to be replaced just because it corrodes and, rusts and eventually, integrity of that pipe. So it's like a lot of these, it's been so long that they've been in the ground since 1989, and even a lot of these galvanized could be from the 70s
Mhm.
or before. So a lot of these, we're talking 40 some year old pipes or maybe
Right.
even older. So a lot of these, they're gonna have to be replaced anyway, and you have, the money available
There
to
it
do
is.
that
Yeah.
free of charge. So that's, if you look at it as an infrastructure improvement, that is an added benefit.
Now, the other part to this secondary system, a lot of our systems are interconnected, emergency interconnections with other systems.
Mhm.
This does not apply to that, correct? Because it's just an emergency, or that was the other question. So they got emergency connection, interconnection with the system that's shut off unless this system needs some water,
Mhm.
vice versa.
Mhm.
So if that interconnection, emergency interconnection, okay,
Mhm.
this system that's either or, I guess, because it could go either way. If one of them doesn't have lead and the other one does have lead, does that emergency connection that's limited, does it count?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I had that the other day and I thought, I don't know if we've ever touched that.
Yeah, that might be a new
So-
one. That's a good one.
So,
So talking about like the galvanized downstream.
right, galvanized downstream,
Yeah,
the galvanized downstream, if system A, the system B was interconnected
yeah,
with emergency line that's shut off, that does not provide water one way or the other all the
Yeah.
time.
yeah, because if that downstream galvanized was ever exposed to leaded water from that upstream source, so if they ever turned it on or had in the past, even if it's shut off now.
Yeah.
In EPA's mind, if it was ever exposed to that potentially leaded
Lead,
water.
yeah.
And it adheres to that inner wall of
So-
galvanized,
So that was the question I had.
yeah,
I do understand, the secondary systems, you're selling water's flowing all the time.
yeah.
Is that emergency connection the same time?
Yeah, I think it depends if water ever did flow down.
Ever did?
Yeah, because remember this, you can replace all the upstream lead service lines and the downstream galvanized. That is still gonna be GRR, because it
Right.
says if it is or ever was.
Ever was exposed.
Ever was, that means anytime in history, anytime
So-
could be 100 years ago. but
So I
that's-
could see the argument from EPA
Yeah.
on the emergency connections. So
Yeah,
sorry, guys, I hated to bring that up, but that was a question, but
yeah,
that's something that we probably need to be looking at
yeah, so. yeah.
also.
So even if they replace those upstream lead service lines and they've eliminated the unknowns remaining as non-lead, if it ever was exposed to that, it's forever classified as GRR. So,
Dang,
yeah, that's like,
that's not good.
yeah,
That's not good.
yeah,
Yeah, okay,
yeah,
sorry.
but yeah. And the definition for galvanized requiring replacement falls under the lead service line category. And we've seen examples where galvanized pipe can leach just like a lead service line if that lead adhered to it.
Right.
And sticks to the walls. And even a small piece of it can leach and be a big problem. So that's why they're kind of treating it as synonymous.
if it ever was.
If it ever was.
So.
Yeah.
Kind of hearing it first now. And like I said, I had this question. I was going to ask you and Jeff about it, but because a lot of these emergency connections are just that, just in case one system A and one system B, whichever,
Yeah.
has a well go down or something, that they open it up for a while. It may be 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
But if system A has lead,
Yeah.
you're going to system B.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because downstream is strictly based on direction of water.
Direction of
That's
water.
another thing EPA had clearly defined for us is what they meant by, downstream, upstream, downstream. But when we, contact the region 7, it's literally the direction of water flow. Yep, through the pipe. So, yeah. And it's not dependent on time or duration. Now, I guess the question would be if they ever did turn that on, because what if they have emergency connection built, but they never actually
Never have turned it on.
So it's never
And that's
through it.
that's very possible.
Yeah, on that case, it's never been exposed.
Never been exposed to it.
Yeah, to it. So yeah, you've never had water that could be potentially leaded flowing to that galvanized. So yeah, in that case, it would never have been
Exposed. anyway.
exposed to it.
So there's an argument there.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
well, like I said, I hated to bring that up, but that was one of the questions too that I got out in the field and actually I didn't have an answer to it. So I thought, yes, it's not on all the time. Has it ever been on?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it falls
yeah,
into that. So.
Yep.
Well, gosh, I hate that, but you answered the question, I guess.
yeah.
So, let's see, was there any other questions? Is there any questions out there from anybody? If not, we'll continue where we're at. The dates.
No questions at the moment.
Okay. All righty, let's take off from here where we're at or wherever you want to go with this. And then Austen does have some notes here. We're going to talk about the new rule coming down. We're going to hit on that a little bit. Don't be surprised what's coming into that. So, and that's still to be tweaked yet. So we'll finish out with this. We'll answer any of your questions. We'll go into the new rule coming down, and we'll see where we're at from there. So.
Okay. Yeah, this was, EPA's stepwise approach. Yeah, process of elimination. Where I talk about preliminary records, community records, on-site or basic visual examination, water analysis, which I think probably won't be as helpful for state of Missouri. And they have excavation at the very end. So it's, so if there's kind of like surgery, it's not the first option.
Well,
but
and it's not, and that's what I've been telling everybody. Digging holes or potting holes or whatever, that's going to be your last resort anyway.
Yeah.
Use your knowledge, use what you've seen out there, use your paper maps, use everything you can first before you even pot a hole.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's why, and they even have visual examination up the chain further, because they're kind of indicating you might be able to visually determine it without digging.
What? Yeah.
So they even have that.
Well, and that could be pictures, that could be under foundations or in basements or.
Yeah. So do the least difficult options first.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's okay. All right. We have one. What about all of the unknowns?
Hey, and that question is kind of cut off. I'm going to go ahead and read that question if you don't mind, Jim.
Yes, please do so.
Jared.
Because that's a broad question right there.
Jared asked, what about all the unknowns? There are thousands of feet of line that will never be seen. Will that come back on the system or operators if lead lines or misinformation is found in the future?
So the unknowns there again would be listed by default you know, the spreadsheet says unknown, possibly lead.
Yeah,
And that's what EPA requires if either side of it is unknown. The status is until it's determined through some record or other method. So, yeah, so in some systems, yeah, it's gonna be a big undertaking and it may take them years of
years.
time.
Yeah.
And under the new rule, they were talking about, you know, wanting to get those inventories completed over a 10-year period.
Yes.
Which would start compliance like 3 years after now, so that'd be like 13 years total. So doing like 10% per year.
And that's where I was gonna hit with it. This is where the 10% actually falls into play.
Yeah,
Not now, but down the road, once this is done and you complete it, and we have 100 unknowns, we have to do 10%, at least 10% of them a year to comply with this.
yeah, but there is a 3-year rolling average.
Yes,
And so that's something too, like if they don't hit, but yeah, I think that was for like replacements and stuff, so you can think of it as 30% over 3 years.
3 years.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah, 10%, but yeah, I think that was.
But to get the unknowns on your spreadsheet
Yeah,
will be unknowns until you can identify it some way, somehow. So if that's potting it or getting the homeowner to say, yes, this is what it is finally,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and you can use that funding, like, that's another good thing to bring up, is the funding that's available. They can use to hire independent contractors to help them with customer outreach, with inventory, replacement efforts, like, that's why the money's there, even just for the inventory part. And that's something we highly encourage, like the water system, you know, to fill out, it's just a 2-page application form. They can fill out and apply for, and they can use that money. It's not supposed to go to existing staff salaries, but the purpose of that was to ease the burden
Right.
on the water operator and the system staff, so they could hire contractors that can do this. There's a lot of great companies out there. They'll do hydro excavation, they'll
Yep.
do door hangers, bill stuffers.
The paperwork's, they'll go visit customers door to door. There are some of them that's doing that. He
Yeah.
did hit on the topic here. You cannot use this money for in-house or paying yourself, paying your staff. You can't do that. So,
Yeah, yeah, because they want it to go to the inventory effort and not just be absorbed in by the water system for normal duties. But the nice thing, the way it's allocated, is it really encourages them, I think, to contract that out.
Yeah.
Or, you know, that eases the burden on them because they're already busy, you know, as you
Yeah.
all know, you're already busy with a lot of stuff, and so that eases the, you know, effort on your part. And there's a lot of companies that'll go to the door and they'll you know, ask if they can inspect the service line coming into the building, or would the customer send them a picture of it. There was one of them would even bring a camera and he just handed it to the customer and said, just snap a photo where that line comes into your basement. I don't even have to come in.
Right.
Just click a photo in 2 seconds and hand the camera back to me. And yeah, we're doing it that way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
All right, got another question from Robert.
Mhm.
With the new meters we are setting right now, how are we supposed to be tracking them?
Okay, so if you're hooking up a new meter, it would be good to see what the service line you're connecting to is on both sides. This rule, we're not actually as concerned about tracking meters.
The meters.
Yeah, it's not written anywhere in that federal reg, so that's something where we're looking at the service line, and if it ties into the meters and you have the right of way to or access, yeah, to that. That's a good thing to do. So, because a lot of systems don't realize, I guess, that they necessarily have, you know, access to look at their meter. And when you're doing that meter inspection, you can see the service line ends.
Yeah.
Possibly if you're doing that replacement or repair. So yeah, tie it into your existing infrastructure,
Right.
and then you're not digging up the yard twice.
Well, I kind of following into this, we have a system in our studio audience. Actually, we were just talking during break. And when they do new meter sets, or, you know, they replacing old meters, they have a service line form
Mhm.
that they do, and when they're doing this, if they've got it dug up where they could see the service line the customer has or whatever they're hooking to, they'll fill that form out,
Yeah,
and that form serves as this inventory.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So, yeah.
so that's something to think about there too.
Mhm.
Lonnie's got a question. Hello, Lonnie. Does this unknown apply to the Diamond Maps gooseneck corp stop question at the tap?
Mhm. Well, usually a gooseneck would be a connector. And so,
I have to go back and look at the diamond. It should be
Yeah.
the same as the spreadsheet.
yeah, if you're putting a connector material type, we do have a category for that. If it's a lead connector, so yeah, that's important information.
On the gooseneck.
Yeah.
And I believe that there's like, what is it?
But he's saying to the tap, which,
What is that? Throw that back up there, Andy. I want to see that again. We want to read that again.
because usually I would think of a gooseneck as the connector to the main, to the service line. I'm not sure what he means by at the tap.
Gooseneck at the corp stop question at the tap.
Yeah, because the service line.
Bonnie, can you maybe rephrase that or ask? Diamond Maps is up on our screen, but I'm not quite sure the question.
Yeah. Yeah, if that connectors they're talking about,
You can
usually it'll
unmute
be at the main.
it.
I
Hey,
would
Jim.
think, or-
Yes, sir.
He's live.
All righty.
Okay, so on the diamond maps, there's a question that wants to know about the tap for the service line from the main. What kind of connector it is. Well, we're assuming most of ours are corp stops, but are we gonna need to look at every one of those?
Oh, okay. Now, if that gun goes into where we're using the corp stop, the saddle tap, the corp stop, that's kind of what we hit on a while ago. Would be another non-lead, other material non-lead.
Yeah, now if there is a leaded connector like a gooseneck, but yeah, if you're talking about the corp stop, that's
Yeah.
kind of the shut off.
Yeah, yeah.
Valve that's underground. That's not really what we're talking about.
So,
as a
Lonnie-
connector.
If I'm reading it right, from the main, you have the saddle tap, you got a corp stop, and you use either whatever type of material you use from that corp stop to the main. Is that what you're talking about? That corp stop right there?
Yeah, from the corp stop to the meter, I mean, that corp stop's mounted to the saddle. So,
Right.
I mean, or in some of ours is threaded right into the pipe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the
But-
connectors were EPA is talking about in the lead and copper rules, an actual segment of piping. It's not
Right.
just a joint or a saddle or.
So
Okay. So
so
we're
that's
not
going to be
talking about-
considered. That would be considered other non-lead,
Yeah,
correct? On that drop down box.
yeah, if there's no section of
It-
piping.
no
serving as
connectors at
connector,
all.
Yeah, that would be no.
And that was a kind of a question I was getting at a while ago, and I take it as a connector too, and I know other operators do the same thing. That's what we as older operators are saying. This is our connector. Well, and it's not what EPA is saying.
Yeah,
So EPA is saying yes, it's two pieces of pipe connected together. That's not what we're saying. We're saying we come from a saddle tap to a corp stop, from a corp stop to the main or to the meter.
because that's more like a clamp or something now.
Yeah.
Yeah, now if you have the actual segment of the piping that's lead piping, that would be a service line, or if it's a short segment, of lead, actual lead pipe.
Yeah.
That could be a connector.
Well, I think I'm following you right, Lonnie. If I'm on the same sheet of music that you are, you're just talking saddle tap, corp stop, and going to the meter,
Yes.
correct? Yes.
About the question.
So in our world, I'm going to say in the old operator world, that's our connector. but that's not what EPA said. So we're gonna put, when we put that drop down box, you're gonna push other non-lead material. So that's what we're using. We're using the saddle tap, we're using the corp stop. So we're using other non-lead.
Yeah, there's no actual separate.
No
segment
connect.
piping
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So I think we're on the right page, right, Lonnie?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Can
I
I ask
think, I
another
hope
question
we,
real quick?
yes.
So as we're doing our inventory and we're finding these galvanized service lines, but we've not found any lead so far, do we mark those as no lead upstream or do we mark them? I mean, because we've never seen lead in our system.
Yeah, so there again, it's if there's any unknowns yet upstream, it would still be kind of considered GRR. It kind of, the burden of proof kind of falls on the water system, because there's some that are very confident in the
That's
record
not-
stuff that
yeah.
they've never ever had a
Well,
lead service line, but if they're able, because EPA just says the system able to demonstrate that there was no
Yep.
lead upstream, but there again, they kind of leave that a bit vague of what they mean by.
What?
what they
So,
mean
so
able to
right
demonstrate.
now, Lonnie's, and Lonnie, I'm gonna throw you not under the bus, but I'm gonna use you.
Mhm.
Lonnie's doing an inventory.
Yep.
They found galvanized, but they have not found any lead anywhere in their system yet.
Yeah.
So they can mark it as galvanized right now.
Yeah,
And then when they finish, if they do not find any lead,
yeah,
they're good.
yeah, yeah.
They're
And
good
it's
as gold.
galvanized non-lead.
But if somewhere in their system, because I'm assuming your system is all looped, and that's gonna count upstream, downstream, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
So during his inventory, if he doesn't find any lead, he's good as gold.
Yeah.
But if he does find a lead connection somewhere,
yeah,
then he's got to go back to all, and he can list them on all of them
yeah,
that he listed on the spreadsheet as galvanized requirement replacement instead of just galvanized.
yeah. So if uncertainty exists, so even if you put unknown in column Y, it's gonna call it GRR.
Yep.
Because EPA says if there's uncertainty or upstream unknowns,
Yeah, and that's
yeah,
column
Y.
Y. Okay.
Yeah, column Y, so you can put unknown for that, but you're still going through your inventory, you
Yeah.
haven't proven that there's not a lead service line
If
yet.
on that column, I'm gonna tell you though, on that column, if you put an unknown there,
Yep,
that's not gonna change the yellow. Right? It'll still list it as
yeah,
lead. So it'll still say yes on it, correct?
yeah, so
Yeah.
consider it GRR.
Yep.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's.
So in the big picture, this is the guy that made the spreadsheet. So the yellow, we can't change that. The only way we can change that is our answers that we provide beforehand. We just can't click on that yellow column and put a no. We can't do that.
Yeah.
It's password protected, and he's got the password, and I can't get the password from him. So So anyway, so how we change that is how we answer the questions. That question there, if you put an unknown, that will leave a yes in that column.
Yeah,
So
yeah, because it says.
it's still saying it's lead.
Yeah.
Possible.
Or, yeah, galvanized, because
Yeah.
EPA is assuming unknowns are presumed to be lead until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it says, was lead ever upstream of this service? And the three answers are yes, no, or unknown. So
Unknown.
put unknown, uncertainty exists, is GRR.
An
It's
unknown
not-
is a yes.
Yeah.
I'm
unknown
just
is-
gonna tell you guys, plain and simple,
Yeah,
unknown is a yes.
yeah, so yes on that one, yeah,
So that's one of them. That's one of the columns. If you do answer an unknown,
Mhm.
it will convert it to a yes.
yeah,
Just plain and simple.
because that means there's uncertainty and if there was a lead
Yeah.
upstream, so, yeah.
You just don't know. Oh, well, we got a big one here.
Mhm.
And it got quiet.
Yeah, it did. And I'm thinking about this one.
So, we recommend in system specific ID column, that's probably what you're putting the meter numbers.
Yeah,
And you can do that. You can also use just a fixed reference number.
right.
We did say, like, if you use meter account numbers and those change over time,
Yes.
the EPA says that information would need to be updated.
Update, yeah.
And so you can leave system specific blank if you want to. You can use a fixed reference like made up code or something.
You can make a number up.
Yeah, you can make a number up, but yeah, if that's changing information, that's another.
You gotta
thing.
remember though, on that one, especially if you do use the meter numbers.
Yeah.
Or the account numbers. If the account number or that meter number, or especially the account number, if it's linked to that address,
Mhm.
you're okay.
Mhm.
But if it's linked to a person, you're not, because that person could change. And remember, if you use the meter numbers, that meter can change. You'll have to go in and update that when you change the meters.
Yeah. Yeah, so ideally system specific ID, it might be better to use a fixed reference number that doesn't change, and that way you don't have to worry about.
I've got several systems that said we're going to create our own numbers.
Mhm.
And as long as that number is linked to that address and you've got it, okay, I'm going to start at meter 1001. Okay. 1001, on the spreadsheet is linked to 101 Main Street.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And in that address, EPA does want them to include a street address if there is one associated
Yep.
with it, and that's something in the new rule that they're gonna make a requirement. If there's a street address available, yeah, they do need to indicate that on the spreadsheet submitted to the state. Anywhere. Oh,
well, we didn't get that one. Can you
Yep,
scroll back on?
I'm gonna put Jason's first because it's relevant to exactly what you're talking about right this moment.
Okay, that's good. Way to go, Andy. I'll give you an attaboy.
yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, oh, I'm talking about, I think the system specific ID column.
ID, that's
Yeah.
what he's going.
Yeah, fixed reference, it doesn't change, and you can use, some will even use a GPS coordinate.
Yes, yeah.
In that, if it doesn't have an address with it, that's an option.
right.
Yeah.
The lifetime ID number, it's good if you can use one. Like I said, if you create your own number, that number is going to stay with that address
Mhm.
forever. Yes. The GPS location.
Yep.
That GPS number, that's going to stay with that location forever.
Yep.
So the account number, if, like I said, if it's linked to that address and not the person,
Mhm.
you can use that number too. Yes, your question, lifetime ID. Yeah, that's probably what it's going to be. It's probably going to be that number is going to be associated with that address from here on out.
And it might help too to distinguish if you have multiple service lines at the same address. That can be a case where different system specific IDs can benefit,
Yep.
help you define those, because you could have
Yep.
3 different service lines at the
Right.
same building.
I hope that answered your question. I forget who asked that, but I hope that answered your question. Yes, that number will be, Jason. That number
Yeah,
actually will be that number forever.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
or should better be. I'll put it that way.
yeah.
So,
Think that's a very specific question to the subs program.
yeah, and I'm not.
And one thing I think I've run into some issues where if you're copying and pasting from a different source spreadsheet, if you're copying and pasting protected formatting, if it's not letting you change or update those numbers, that means if you did regular copy or paste, you're transferring that locked or protected cells formatting onto our spreadsheet, because by default, the cells under system specific ID are unlocked. not protected, but if you copy cells, you're transferring them.
But, yeah,
So I think what you're probably having an issue there is if you did regular copy paste, it's moving the hidden embedded
and
formulas.
you're absolutely right, because I know there's some other systems.
Yeah,
Some
Yeah.
clerks saying, I've manipulated this, and I'm saying,
well,
you shouldn't.
and like
shouldn't
your,
be.
what I recommend too, when you're pasting addresses from your billing software, you can copy, but then click paste values only,
Yes,
and that will transfer the text, but it will not
the text on,
the
yes.
text only. And then you
yeah.
can still edit it, because if you move that locked cell from your billing software, you're now pasting it into our spreadsheet. That's not because it's our spreadsheet's fault, that's because you transferred everything
Yeah.
from there, so just be aware.
And the upgrades to Windows and Chrome and all of that
Yeah,
has that now. It has paste text only.
yeah, so anytime you copy and paste in those, I would use paste values.
Yeah, if you don't have it right now, update
Yeah,
and you'll have it on your program.
yeah, because the paste option's upper left corner on the home tab, and just click the arrow, it drops down. And it's like the left one in the middle.
Yep.
And it's just paste values that just transfers the text. And
Yep.
then you can still edit it. And
So yeah, it can screw things up if you do it the other way.
yeah,
Yeah.
because if you do regular copy paste, you're literally moving the entire cell and
Right.
all of its associated formatting. Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah, that's a, common one. And yeah, EPA addressed that in the proposed lead and copper rule improvements. And they said if a system declared to be non-lead later discovers lead connector or lead service line, they would have to then initiate the inventory requirements and post their inventory. And they'd have like 60 days to update that. And yeah, then there'd be, I think by then they would have to go through the formal inventory process, so.
So if you do later on find lead,
Yeah,
you're gonna have to go through the whole process
yeah,
as if you did have lead in them.
yeah, because then your system's no longer certified that it's
It's
lead
not,
free.
yeah.
It's non-lead. If it is, if you discover one, there could be more.
And it can happen.
Yeah,
It can happen.
yeah,
You know, something in the old part of town or something in the old part of the system that
Mhm.
something shows up and you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's
yeah,
it, but it can't. So,
Yep.
yeah, you'll have to just follow everything like you would at the beginning. So, anything else? Is our live studio audience still with us? Yeah, baby. So, but where are we at here? The 30-day notification. We kind of hit on that earlier. But I am going to hit on that again because we're here now. When we're done with the inventory and we do send it into DNR, this is when the 30 days kick in. Okay. And this is going to be for your unknowns, your lead, or galvanized requiring replacement people. Okay. Customer refusals, throw it in there too. Customer refusals is unknowns. Okay. So if you've listed any customer refusals and all these others, these are the ones that you're going to have to send this template to within 30 days.
yeah. Now, the 30-day timer starts October 16th.
16.
So we have had some submit early that have had leads or galvanized required replacement or unknowns on them. We did reach out to EPA and ask them, like, is it 30 days from when they submit it or starting October 16th? And they said actually starting October
16th.
16th. So you can submit now
Right.
and you're still okay. You don't have to, you're not held to that 30-day limit
That's good.
until October 16th starts, and that's when the 30-day.
So every public water system in this state.
Yeah.
Starting October 17th.
Yeah.
That's when your countdown starts.
Yep.
And you'll have every system. I guarantee you every system's going to have. Well, I'm not going to guarantee it because I know there's some that do know. But almost every system's going to have at least an unknown or at least galvanized requiring replacement. We're gonna have something that you're gonna have to send these to. And we hit on this a while ago. Right now, DNR is making these templates, and they'll be available in different languages. So when they're done with it, they'll have it available. I'll have it too. I'll make it available on our website too. So it'll be there where you can get, okay? It's something that's gonna have to be done. We're gonna have to send these out. Ain't gonna get around it. So, and these, as long as you've got unknowns or any of the rest on your spreadsheet from here on out, every year you'll have to send this notification out to that customer. So,
Yeah, and we're hoping they can probably use Microsoft Mail Merge to populate those notifications, because they do need to indicate which of those three they have.
mhm.
And EPA does specify it goes to that, like you can see the highlighted text. Notice must be provided to person served by the water system at those service connections. And so, yeah, so that is something there. They can probably use Mail Merge and pull that info to populate those.
So what we're getting at here, or what's where we're going, if you got renters and that renter, actually you send the bill to the landlord, that landlord gets this letter, not that renter. Whoever gets the bill, correct? So you can mail that or leave a door hanger on that renter. But that renter, if that renter doesn't pay the water bill and the landlord does, it needs to go to the landlord, not that renter. I mean, you could give it to the renter and say, hey, we don't know, but your landlord hasn't responded, you know. But I'm just saying, whoever that water bill goes to is who needs to get that at that address. So just kind of getting the little questions that I've been asked out in the field.
Yeah.
And as we go, hey, who do we send it to? Well,
Yeah, and there's some of them that hopefully we'll get that posted on the webpage soon as possible, and they can start notifying early, and they can break it up into batches.
mhm.
Because some of our large water systems, that was a concern they had. When they send those out, they might get questions from customers, if they have concerns about lead or getting their service line identified. And so I think some of the bigger cities, they're gonna stagger it when they send those out, start early. And then when they have some calls coming in, a lot of the bigger systems have like call centers, or they
Right.
contract with a third party. So then they can address those calls in smaller numbers than doing it all at once.
Now I had a system call me here not too long ago, and they said, hey, we're a system of 2,500 people. Okay, fairly good average system. We're going to mail these templates out to everybody right now. And I'm going, first I'm saying, why? Because you haven't done the inventory yet. And we don't know how many we're going to, well, they're going to send them out to everybody. And I said, well, it's probably doing work that you probably don't need to right now. Like Austen was saying, there's systems, big systems, that's got 150, 200,000 connections that they're going to have to get this done. I can see that. Okay.
Yeah.
But a system, medium-sized system, whatever, wanted to go ahead and do that now before we get the inventory out. Really, it's putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
And we really don't have a good template yet for that. So, I mean, you can make your own, but
Yeah, because it needs to be like we do have the format, and it does need to indicate which of those three materials they have, if it's lead service line GR,
Right.
unknown,
Yeah.
and customer address. So yeah, and two, you might want your public facing inventory available, because otherwise you send these morning notifications out and you don't actually have a service line inventory
Right.
for them to see what's actually out there. And so There's some companies I think that have, they might post like a online interactive map with GIS layers that shows, service lines that have been identified so far. So they've kind of got some of their public facing site. But there's multiple ways to do that. So each water system is required, like the same year that they're publishing their inventory to the state, to publish a public facing inventory or make that information available,
Mhm.
whether it's like tabular data, interactive map, static map, or just the same Excel spreadsheet, whatever. Large systems with populations 50,000 or over have to make it available online. That's not a requirement for small systems at this time, but some of them still want to, if they have a GIS option anyway, web page or something. Some of them, they're certainly welcome if they want to, share that with customers to kind of encourage more public outreach and information they can.
The question here, if they want to send something like that out, I'm sure they could.
Well, but we were saying, or EPA's rules are specifying it can't be just a blanket notification, so
yeah,
it
that's
does
true.
have to
And it
indicate
does say
which of those three at that
lead,
specific system.
galvanized requiring replacement for an unknown.
Yeah, now you can autofill that with mail merge, rather than manually check marking.
Yeah.
Each one, I guess it depends on the size of your system. If you want to just check mark
Right.
it, you can, but yeah, it does have to be kind of specific.
Right.
Each notification to each of those customers, because you have to indicate which of those three they actually.
So if you have that customer
Yeah,
refusal or whatever,
Yeah.
you're going to send them a template saying, we don't know, you've got an unknown, we don't know what your service line is, and it could be lead. So,
Yeah.
And then you're gonna have you might have the ones that has the lead line.
Yeah.
And you will send them a template stating you have a lead line.
Yeah.
And this is the health hazard.
Yeah.
And it needs to be replaced. Not probably, it needs to be replaced.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So then same way with the galvanized required replacement. That's what he was saying, the three different templates.
Yeah, and they'll
Not just the one that covers,
Yeah.
hey, we don't know what you got,
Yeah, so, and then there's like a checkbox, so which would indicate which of those three they have. So, yeah, so blanket notification's not really gonna work as far as, indicating which of those three. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? We've sat here for 3 hours and talked about this. We could probably sit here all day, but we're not going to. Austen, if you want to hit on the improvement rule real quick, or any of the rules that's coming down that you want to highlight, and now be the time if we can do that before we get out of here. And so
there's only 3 provisions from the LCRR that's going to be adopted this year. So that initial inventory submission, that's really the main thing to get that.
October 16th.
October 16th, that's the biggest thing. And then there's just a couple other things like 24-hour notification for systems that have action level exceedance or an individual high sample.
So let's just kind of touch on that real quick. The high samples, if they've got anything like 0.10,
well, yeah, so 15 is still
15's the automatic, you got to do something.
Yeah, 15 is still the threshold.
Yeah.
Under the new rule, the action level will be lowered to 10, but that's not.
Down the road.
That's down the road, so we're still at 15.
Yeah.
The regular, and then the 30-day notification. So that's main things. And the new rule too, we're waiting for the final version of the rule improvements to be
What
published.
we think it may.
It should be before October 16th, if all goes well. That's what EPA is saying. We're not exactly sure which, but they have to get it out by then to cancel the rule revisions.
Right, yeah.
Because they don't want the rule revisions to go into full compliance the way originally was, because that was originally the compliance date.
Right.
So they pretty much have to get it pushed out before October 16th.
Now, are they doing any public hearings or is all of that done?
There should be I think another comment period. There's usually, I think, a 60-day comment period. So they had one for the proposed rule that was November
Right?
30th
Mhm.
of this past year,
Right.
up until like February 5th. And so for this final rule, yeah, there should be another
Okay.
60-day comment.
How
period.
will our systems know when that is?
Yeah,
Will
so,
that be on?
yeah, I think we'll send an email blast out and inform them.
Okay.
Yeah, when that.
It probably on Zoom or probably on something like that format? Or it won't be an in-person something?
No, we'll probably send emails or letters out and, yeah, inform those systems of that new.
That they can make comments and send these comments to.
Yeah, the rule will be published in the Federal Register, and then, yeah, then there should be a 60-day comment period, I think, and is typical for that when there's a new rule, and we're expecting there to be a 3-year delay between effective and compliance date.
Okay.
Yeah, so probably sampling under the new rule wouldn't come into play probably until late 2027, or thinking January of 2028 though. It's
Okay.
usually you want to begin lead and copper testing at the start of a new calendar year.
Right.
For systems on 6-month schedule.
Well, and that's kind of where we touched base a while ago. Your samplings are gonna change. I'm just gonna tell you. About every system, your samplings are gonna change somewhat somehow. I
Yeah,
would say.
yeah, a lot of them may have to go back to standard monitoring if they have the lead galvanized carbon replacement or unknowns. So, yeah, which if they do that nationwide is gonna be a lot of sample bottles
We,
all at once. Now, they might stagger that because they did that, I think, under the previous rule. Where I think it was like large systems, then medium systems and small ones.
right,
And I know that was one of the things in the proposed version that they were pushing for is commenters were saying, why don't we stagger this so we don't all have to sample?
do it all at one time.
Do it at one time, because that could overwhelm the lab
Everybody,
capacity.
yeah.
And so we'll see if hopefully they might implement a staggered approach to that, just to ease the burden on laboratories. And
So right now, just kind of 3 of the basic
yeah,
is what we're looking at.
yeah,
We'll look at some more down the road.
yeah.
So, is there anything else that you want to hit on that new
Um,
rule that maybe?
Well, risk tier definitions will be updated. And some of that, we're still waiting to see the final version of the rule, just to see if there's any tweaks to it or what changes, but.
Right.
But yeah, so we have just the proposed version for now, but yeah, we'll see in the final version.
Okay.
Yeah, when that's posted, then we'll need a chance to read it ourselves.
Read it and yeah,
But
so
sometimes-
it's down the road a little
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, and you'll have time, so, yeah, but that's kind of nice, like, as far as focusing on the inventories, that's great to have this early time now.
Right.
And I think they're hoping by the baseline inventory 3 years later, they'll be able to make even more progress.
Right.
And, yeah, not have to implement, because EPA didn't want them to have to implement the entire LCRR and then have to implement the LCRI.
Yeah.
So instead, they just want to cancel that out with the LCRI and just push that back 3 years.
So we're looking for something
Yeah,
before the 16th of October.
yeah, should be, yeah.
So it'll be comments and stuff. DNR will have it on their website.
Mhm.
Be looking, and if they have it on their website, he'll push it to me. We'll have it on ours, and that way we'll have it on 2 different places. So, kind of wrap everything up. Yes, every public water system in the state, every public water system in the United States has to do this. It won't be no excuse. Well, I didn't know about it. Well, I'm sorry. That's what we're here for. If you need any help with anything, you need me to come and sit down with you and go over the spreadsheet or go over whatever, let me know. We'll make time for that. When your inventory is done, you do not have to wait till October 16th to send it in. And how do we send that in? We're going to email it to Austen right now.
Mhm.
And that's going to be the only way right now we have.
Yeah.
And it has to be the DNR spreadsheet.
Mhm.
I was with the system the other day that was putting me on the EPA spreadsheet. They will not accept that EPA spreadsheet. It has to be on this DNR spreadsheet.
Yeah,
So when you're done with that inventory and you're saying, hey, we're good to go, we're done. Do not wait till October 16th to send it in that last day. Go ahead and send it in to Austen. I'm sure Andy can throw his email up real quick. But if not, we'll have it. He's got it. We'll make sure if you don't have it, you got it. So Austen, anything else that you want to tell these fine people today?
oh, yeah, I think that's, yeah, pretty good. And if there's any other questions, yeah, feel free to reach out
Yep.
to us or give
Oh.
us a call and yeah, I'll be happy to help. And there's some great resources on MRWA's webpage
Yep.
as well. And yeah, thank you all for your time.
It's all there. Austen, thank you for being here today.
Yep.
Our studio audience, thank you. There's Austen's email right there. Thank you, Andy. And save that, write that down. Because that's where you're going to send this inventory to. So, with no other questions, and I hope you enjoyed this segment. Just questions and answers, and getting to know what you need to know. So, with that, anything else, Andy? If you've got anything, take it away.